Think your job sucks. Drowning in deadlines. Boss breathing down your neck. Or maybe you're switching jobs more often than you switch Wi-Fi networks. Fair enough. Welcome to Sleepy History, where the past never sleeps. And history isn't nearly as fragrant as you'd think. Before you send in that resignation letter, let us take you on a journey to a time when occupational hazard meant being buried alive, or forced to sniff things no nose should ever meet. In a world where soap was optional toilets, where suggestions and career advice didn't include stay alive, some people still had to clock in. And oh boy, did they clock into some truly cursed gigs. Jobs so disgusting, you'd pray to be reborn as a rock. Curious yet. So before we dive in, tell us in the comments, what's your current job? And would you trade it for one of these Sleepy History, where work was hell, but unemployment meant, well, actual death? This is a story about shard. I mean high-quality material. Oh yeah, listen up. Name's Pete Shitty Pete, if you must. And yes, I made my living wading through the one thing every man, woman, and bishop leaves behind, fresh, steaming, honest-to-God human shit. Now don't go clutching your pearls. You wipe your R's, don't you? Well, someone's got to pick up the leftovers. That someone was me. I was a night soil man, a fancy title for midnight poop collector. Medieval towns didn't have sewers, plumbing, or even dignity. Just wooden bogs perched over deep, dark pits, each one bubbling with brown gold. Every night, I'd knock on doors like a stinky Santa Claus evening, finished your business buckets full. I'll take it. 1 bucket of shit earned me a copper coin. And 1 coin, barely enough for a stale loaf, hard enough to bludgeon a duck. But here's the twist, mate. Back then, shit was treasure. No joke. Farmers fought over it to grow turnips. Alchemists boiled it for medicine. Some even stuffed it in gunpowder. That's right. Your grand's runny dump might have blown up a castle wall. So next time you flush, think of me bent over a pit ankle-deep in destiny. My job: reclaim what humanity so eagerly dumped behind. Or, as I like to say, I collect what the world shits on. Literally. Welcome to the glamorous life of the medieval crap industry. Let's dive in. Just don't breathe through your nose. A day at work. Where's the SH? Pete's here. Now let me take you on a magical journey. Through alleyways slick with piss, past outhouses creaking with secrets, and into the noble realm of human waste. My shift started before the roosters farted. Wooden bucket in one hand, rag over my nose, and dreams in my heart. I wasn't just a man. I was a maestro of manure, a composer of caca, a connoisseur of crap. And my symphony, oh, it played from dawn till dusk in squelches, splashes, and the occasional tragic slip. I'd go door to door with all the charm of a plague rat, tapping on shutters like a dung fairy with bad breath. Morning, love. Finished your morning purge. Fancy a clean slate. If they nodded out, came the bucket warm, wobbling, full of yesterday's regrets. And oh, the variety. You think shit's just shh, child, please. I had names for 'em all. There was the driftwood special, logs bobbing lazily in a soup of sorrow. Then flan surprise, a creamy monstrosity that jiggled like custard cursed by Satan. And don't forget rhino dump, dense, defiant, and liable to break your shovel. Each turd told a story of last night's stew, the ale gone wrong, or that one bloke who clearly didn't chew. The going rate? 1 copper per bucket. 10 buckets earned me well enough to buy a crusty sandal that squeaked louder than a virgin in a brothel. But it wasn't about the money. No, it was the craft, the pride. I wasn't just moving muck. I was preserving public health feeding farms and fueling the economy with excrement. And yet, my artistry wasn't always appreciated. One evening, I stumbled while hauling a particularly splashy load. The bucket went airborne. The crowd went silent. Then, impact. A full-blown fecal fallout. Mothers screamed. Fathers gagged. One old man cried. And I stood there, covered in it all, arms outstretched like the world's saddest Jesus. They all complain about their bosses, I muttered later that night. But I got the whole village yelling at me because I baptized their feet in stewed shai. Ah, memories. But did I quit hell? No. I rinsed off with a river that probably had worse things in it, patched up my pride, and went back to work. Because when the people called, "Where's the SHT?" I answered, "Pete's here." Not all heroes wear capes. Some carry buckets. Legendary turd accidents. The brown storm rises. Now look, I can talk all day about the dignity of labor and the noble beauty of bowel byproducts. But the truth, sometimes the job exploded in my face. Literally. Take the rainy night of 1329, sky pissing sideways, streets slicker than a buttered eel. I'm hauling a double bucket prime stuff, rich and ripe, and bam! My foot slides on a bit of runaway cabbage. Next thing I know, I'm airborne, arms flapping like a pigeon mid-stroke. Splash! Straight into the cesspit. Not beside it, not near it, in it. Neck deep in 1,000 bowel movements. I came up, coughing eyes, burning, whispering to the heavens, I am truly drowning in my career. They say you only live once. I lived twice that night. Once as a man, and again as a turd ghost. Then there was the great dog chase of St. Bellend Street. I'm minding my business, balancing 2 steaming buckets of night stew, when this mangy beast, half dog, half devil, locks eyes with me, growling, foaming, possessed. And it sprints. So do I. Now picture this me running buckets, sloshing side to side like some kind of demonic stew, pot-hot brown curry, splashing onto cobblestones, kids cheering, old ladies crossing themselves. I nearly made it. Then one bucket slipped. Boom. Splash zone. SHT went airborne. Landed on a merchant's hat. He thought it was holy punishment. But you know what's worse than dog chases and rain slips? Being invisible in your own town. You see, people needed me, but they never wanted to see me. Couldn't marry. Couldn't sit in church next to folk. One time I reached to shake a priest's hand. He flinched like I'd offered him the plague. Another time I tried flirting with a barmaid. She said I smelled like a cursed soup. I was vital, but untouchable. So yeah, you digital kids cry about deadlines. Oh no, my client wants a revision. Darling, I once had 4 buckets rupture in the street. It was like a brown tsunami breaking through the town square. Children screamed. Birds flew off. A horse fainted. But through it all, I stood tall and slightly stained. Because a true night soil man doesn't run from SHT. He runs with it. STT and spukums. Class, even the nobles crap like dogs. Now let's squash a lie that's been floating around like a turd in a moat, that nobles were somehow above it all. Clean, graceful, angelic. Bollocks. I've been inside bishops' latrines, barons' bogs, and lords' luxury outhouses, and let me tell you, behind all the velvet robes and powdered wigs, they dropped bombs just like the rest of us. No worse. Don't let the silk fool you. Their diets were nightmares. Greasy meat, spoiled cheese ale thicker than porridge, and no veggies in sight. The result? Toxic. Apocalyptic. Arse-blasted madness. One time I collected from the chamber pot of a duke so full of pride, he refused to admit he even had a backside. But the truth was in the bucket, lumpy, angry, and deeply disrespectful to the laws of nature. And oh, the rituals. These bastards wiped their royal holes with everything from cabbage leaves to vulture feathers to crushed seashells. Ever scraped your crack with a scallop shell? No, then you haven't suffered. You've heard of the groom of the stool, right real position. The King of France had a personal arse wiper, a man who stood by day and night to clean the royal ring. Now that's loyalty. Meanwhile, I had to pick up after the cleanup, the turd that came after the fancy feather. That's my legacy. And here's the kicker. These fancy folk, despite their status, still made the same poop sounds. I swear on my crusty bucket, I once heard a count grunt so hard I thought he was giving birth to a demon. Doctors, blacksmiths, bishops. They all sat on the same rickety wooden seat, stared at the same crack in the wall, and pushed like peasants. The difference, they had someone to pretend they didn't. I remember one rich bloke servant whispering, "Sir doesn't defecate. He expels nobility." Mate, that nobility smelled like fermented regret and curdled wine. So next time you think someone's better than you because they've got a feathered hat or a shiny ring, just remember every arsehole's equal in the end. And lucky me, I got to meet them all. Love and Histort. A stench the heart couldn't ignore. I know what you're thinking. Who'd fall in love with a man who hauls human waste for a living? And you'd be right, most didn't. But I wasn't always just shitty Pete. Once I was just Pete, a hopeful heart in filthy boots dreaming of something warm that didn't come from a bucket. Her name was Elsie. She sold bread in the market. Her buns were legendary, and not just the ones in the basket. Every morning I'd pass by, drop a copper, and pretend I was there for the crusty rye. But truth is, I was hungry for her smile. I even tried to clean up, washed my hands in river water, combed my hair with a stick, dabbed myself with wildflowers to mask the lingering aroma of my shift. But the stink, oh the stink, it had a soul of its own. Word got out. They say kissing Pete's like licking the inside of a latrine. His breath could kill a crow. Don't let him near the cheese. It absorbs odors. Elsie never said a word, but one day I saw her cover her nose as I passed. That was that. But fate's a strange bastard. One night I met Mira, a blind girl from the edge of town. She bumped into me near a manure pile, romantic, I know. I apologized, expecting the usual gag or insult, but she smiled and said, "You smell honest." We talked for hours. She didn't care what I did. She said I had earthiness like rain on soil, like someone who never lied. My heart did a little jig. For once, I was more than the job. I was Pete, the man, not Pete the poop mule. We nearly had a life together. Then the day I brought flowers, I tripped. Bucket overturned. A full load. All over her shoes. Even a blind girl can feel warm diarrhea seep between her toes. She screamed. I ran. The dream died. That's the thing about my kind. We're always close to people, but never with them. Needed, but avoided. Trusted with SHET, but not with hearts. Some folks leave behind legacies of love art or battle. Me, I left behind a stain that couldn't be scrubbed. But I still believe love is possible, even for us, even if it comes with a whiff. After all, roses still grow in compost. The grand finale, eating bran, is cleaner. Looking back now, knees creaky and nose forever ruined. I can honestly say this job taught me how to smell life properly. Not just the stink, but the stories behind the stink. You learn real quick what matters when you spend your life ankle-deep in humanity's leftovers. People lie. Perfume lies. Titles lie. But shit never lies. And here's the thing. You can wash off the smell of turds, but the stench of hypocrisy that one clings to the soul. Now I'm retired. Hung up my bucket. Passed my shovel to the next poor sod. Before I left, I said, "Kid, I don't care if they laugh at you, gag at you, or avoid you in church. Just hold your head high, even when you're knee-deep in arse water, because the world needs cleaners, the ones who deal with what everyone dumps, and no one wants to admit exists. You office lot get yelled at by your boss. I got a colon explosion to the face at 2 a.m. under a broken lantern. So really, who's tougher? So yeah, eat your fancy food, wear your clean clothes, scroll your shiny screens. But remember, someone somewhere once picked up what you left behind. And maybe, just maybe, that someone was me. Shitty Pete, retired, stained, unbothered, and still walking taller than half the lords I ever met. P.U.S. Extractor. Your life may be shit, but at least you're not squeezing pus out of a syphilitic noble's arse. So there I was, knee-deep in human turds for years, sniffing every type of medieval bowel movement, like some sort of royal sommelier of shite. Then one day, while scraping dry diarrhea off a bishop's chamber pot, I had a divine revelation. Pete, I thought, maybe it's time for a career change. Maybe it's time you sniffed something a little more refined. Well, good news, no more poo. Bad news, it's still a bodily fluid, still warm, still yellow. And this one comes with worms screaming, and sometimes a little explosion if you press too hard. And that, my friends, is how I ended up swapping shit for pus. Yep, big promotion. I went from scraping the floor of outhouses to massaging festering boils on noble arseholes. Sounds glamorous, right? They called it therapeutic drainage. I called it pimple purgatory. I worked in grand manor houses that stank worse than a boiled rat in a wine barrel. The walls were draped in velvet. The chandeliers sparkled, and in the middle of it all sat Lord Pustule-Pants, oozing with God's wrath, in the form of syphilis, leprosy, and every plague-borne boil you could imagine. My morning ritual, saltwater linen cloth, and these two blessed bare hands. No gloves. Gloves were for wimps, and surgeons. I'd crack my knuckles, kiss the cross just in case I died mid-boil, and dive head-first into someone's pus-filled thighs, whispering, "This one's for rent, Pete. Just think of the rent." They screamed, I squeezed, and sometimes the pus shot back, right in my ear. And that's how I started my second career as a medieval pus technician. Because why settle for cleaning up yesterday's shit when you can squeeze today's despair right from the source? Pus memories, syphilis, leprosy, and boil hell. Now let me take you back to the golden age of pus. Not golden like sunshine, golden like that oozy, crusty color that leaks from an infected syphilis sore. You think modern folks got skin problems, acne, blackheads? Try living in a time where people washed once a month, believed demons caused disease, and treated infections by praying louder. I worked with it all, mate. Syphilis boils that looked like angry baby mouths. Leprosy lumps with skin flaking off like moldy bread. Carbuncles so big you could balance a tankard on them. And don't get me started on cysts. God's little surprise bags full of horror. One time I had to tend to a noble lady with a pus-filled lump under her armpit. She smelled like a roasted pig that had been left in the sun, and the skin was so inflamed it looked like a plum ready to pop. But I couldn't just pinch and run. Nah, I had to soothe her. "It's all right, m'lady," I whispered like a medieval therapist while pushing down on her pustule like I was milking a goat. She screamed. I winced. Something squirted. And for a brief moment I thought I saw God. But nope, just pus flying into my eyeball. I ain't joking. Right into my soul window. Burned like hellfire. I went half blind for 2 months. Couldn't tell if I was squeezing a boil or a tit, but did I stop? Of course not. 'Cause in this job you don't retire, you rot. Let me paint a picture of my daily clients. One had so much syphilis on his groin, it looked like a rotten fruit basket. I didn't know if I was cleaning genitals or peeling garlic. Another had leprosy boils on his back so thick I used a butter knife to open them. Ever seen maggots do the wave I have? Right there inside some lord's back blister, squirming like it was a bloody spa. You see, pus back then wasn't just a symptom. It was a lifestyle. They believed draining it out let the bad humors escape. So they called me the Pus Man, like I was some kind of alchemist. Except instead of turning lead to gold, I turned boils into open wounds. No gloves, no masks, just hands, sweat, and trauma. And the sound, oh God, the sound. That wet pop when a boil finally bursts like someone stepping on a frog. Followed by that smell, a mix of cheese, arse, and regret. But hey, I was proud. Others feasted. I squeezed. That was my bread and butter, or more like bread and butter with infection sauce. Divine wrath and pus from hell. Now let me tell you about the time I nearly got executed by a nobleman's bollock. Yeah, you heard that right. It all started on a foggy Tuesday, the kind where the air smells like dead fish and unwashed armpits. I got summoned to Lord Dungworth's manor. Fancy place, chandelier made of bones and everything. He walks in robe half open, points at his crotch, and says, "There's a demon festering in my scrotum. Remove it." That was my life. So there I was, squatting between the legs of a man who once executed a baker for undersalting his bread. I'm holding a sack of nobility in one hand and a hot towel in the other, trying to find the head of this pus volcano. And then I sneeze. A mighty sneeze. The kind of sneeze that rattles windows and kills butterflies. That bastard of a boil explodes like a ripe pomegranate. Pus hits Lord Dungworth straight in the face. Splatter pattern like a murder scene. I swear even his mustache curled from shock. The man screamed like he was being skinned alive by Satan himself. And what do I get? A boot to the arse, and my pay docked 2 goats and a turnip. Outrageous, I told him. Oi, I'm not a miracle worker. I'm just the town's boil squeezer. If you wanted a surgeon, maybe don't hire a bloke with shit on his boots and flies on his hat. But you know what? Deep down, I was proud. That day, I truly ascended. Not because I popped a noble's nutzit, but because I made art. That was performance therapy, me versus the demon of scrotal decay. There was a moment, as the boil ruptured, that I saw something move. A worm. A live one. Winking at me. No joke. Little bastard had probably been living there since the Third Crusade, chewing on guilt and old venereal sins. And I didn't flinch. Not once. I used to think my job was disgusting, but now it's divine. I heal without potions. I relieve pain with my thumb. I extract evil 1 sack of pus at a time. People call it gross. I call it redemption with pressure. So yeah, while Lord Dungworth scrubs his face with holy water and curses my name, I walk out of his mansion like a champion. 1 boot full of shit, the other full of pride. Because when pus meets purpose, that's when art is born. Eye pain and heartbreak. The true art of pimple pressing. Now let me tell you, there's a moment in every pus squeezer's life when your soul cracks a little. For me, it was the day I saw a boil growing right on the lips of Lady Isadora. Aye, those lips, the mouth ones. She was the kind of noblewoman that made grown men drop their loaves just by blinking. But then I saw it. This fat, glistening, devil-colored lump sitting there like a cursed pearl on her face. Looked like God changed his mind halfway through blessing her. I pressed it gently, whispering sweet encouragement, like it was a frightened cat. Then pop! It exploded right into my beard. Thick as clotted cream, warm as bath water, smelled like dead hope. From that day on, I lost faith in beauty. I don't trust smooth faces anymore. Every cheek hides a battlefield mate. And don't get me started on the holy pustules. One Lord, Sir Geoffrey of God knows where, dragged me into his prayer room bare-chested and trembling. He pointed at a monstrous zit right above his nipple and said, "This is divine punishment for lust." Well, fuck me sideways with a crucifix. He made me light a candle, sing a hymn, then carefully extract the sin. I mean, what am I, a priest with tweezers? The thing squirted out with such force it hit the wooden cross behind him. I nearly got accused of blasphemy by association. Still, I keep going. Why? 'Cause this is art made. Pus is my paint, boils are my canvas, and I'm the Da Vinci of drippy infections. Nowadays, people do this shite on TikTok. Live streaming blackhead removals with lo-fi music and pastel gloves. Back in my day, we did it raw. No gloves, no soft jazz, just me, a dirty rag, and faith in my fingers. They get likes. I got lice, but truth be told, I loved it. There's a strange joy in hearing that perfect squelch. That moment the pressure releases and someone sighs in relief, like you just exorcised a demon from their skin. You feel like a bloody hero, a healer, a messy little miracle worker. And sometimes, in the middle of all that ooze and misery, someone looks at you with tears in their eyes and says, "Bless you, Pete." And that's why I never quit. Well, that and the free bread. You know what they say, beauty is skin deep, but pus. That bastard goes straight to the soul. Pustule protocols, folk magic, and foul methods. Now let's talk about cleaning them. Holy boils, yeah. Don't let them posh doctor types fool ya. In the villages, we had our own ways of dealing with pus. And by our own ways, I mean absolute medieval madness passed down from one toothless nana to the next. First up, moldy bread. No joke. Old crusty bread with green fluff on it. Slap that baby right on the boil and pray it didn't grow legs overnight. If the mold moved, you knew it was working. If it screamed, that's just the devil leaving your arse. Then there's virgin piss. Oh yes. They swore that the first morning piss of a maiden, untouched by man or misery, had sacred healing powers. So you'd see poor little girls get dragged to market with a jug, "Oi, we need a splash of piss for grandma's ass lump." Proper trauma, that was. And burnt pig hair ashes. I don't know who was the first bastard to shave a hog torch, it then rubbed the ashes on someone's butt boil. But cheers to 'em. Probably thought, if this don't work, at least it smells like pork. Me, I tried everything. Once I even used holy water. Thought I'd get all fancy and let the Lord help out. Poured a splash on a night's pus pocket, said a little prayer, and boom! The boil tripled in size like it had been possessed. I swear the bastard looked me dead in the eye and said, "Thanks. Now it has 2 heads." I said, "Maybe that's the Father and the Son, mate. Still waiting on the Holy Spirit." These nobles, man. They acted like their pus was made of blessed gravy. All rotted flesh and crusty lumps, but walking round like God personally sculpted their bum cheeks. And let me tell you about one reward I'll never forget. Spent the whole morning squeezing boils from this plump lady's groin. Must have been a dozen angry red bastards. Proper war zone. After I finished, she looked at me, wiped the sweat off her mustache, and said, "Thank you, my brave healer," then kissed me, on the lips with tongue. Mate, I still tasted pus. But you know what? I took it like a champ. Because in this job, you don't just extract mounds of medieval misery. You collect stories, trauma, and the occasional pox-riddled smooch. We weren't just pus pumpers. We were folk legends with fingernails full of hell. So next time you see some modern TikTok doctor wearing gloves, lo-fi music, playing poppin' zits with soft lighting and subtitles, remember me, Shitty Pete. No gloves, no filters, just raw pus and raw passion. Pus has a soul too. I'm Shitty Pete, and yes, I retired, twice. First time was when I lost my sense of taste from sniffing too much pus. Second time, when I realized I missed the smell. That creamy stench crept into my dreams, into my soup, into my bloody identity. You lot think squeezing pus is shameful. I once drained a boil the size of a fist growing on the rim of a priest's arsehole while he was preaching about cleansing the soul. Guess who really did the cleansing? A lady once said, "Pete, you're the angel of infected pores." I didn't know whether to cry or gag, so I just smiled and kept squeezing. You folks sit in aircon offices crying over deadlines. Me, I squeezed a syphilitic nobleman's bum boil during a hailstorm. So tell me, who's really winning at life? But now I'm done, for real. I'm leaving behind my towel, my saltwater jar, and a little notebook marking the pus hotspots of England. My apprentice asked me once, "Master Pete, does pus have a soul?" I laughed, and I said, "Of course it does." Every blob of pus is a confession. You squeeze it, you see the truth. Because pus might dry up, but fake people cling harder than a monk to his chastity belt. Pus can be squeezed, but shame. No glove thick enough can hold that back. If God ever gave me a calling, it was this. But next life, I beg him, don't make me the guy who shaves noblemen's crotches. Scab scraper. Welcome to the spa that smells like dead dogs. You think poppin' pus for rich folks was the worst part of my career? That was just the fucking appetizer. Because after years of squeezing boils, guess what promotion I got? That's right. I became the official itch scraper and foot washer for the nobility. Spa therapist, medieval edition. I went from Pus Pete to Sir Scrapes a Lot. Prestige, kinda. Regret, absolutely. But don't get me wrong, no one got closer to the nobles than me. Not even their wives. I was right there under their robes, scraping crusty ringworm from between their cheeks. You think you're intimate with someone? Try peeling centuries-old ghee from under their royal balls. See, nobles back then were allergic to water. Not physically, just mentally dumb. They believed bathin' let demons crawl in through the pores. You know, just science things. So instead of washing, they covered the stink with perfume and prayed. And when that didn't work, they called me their medieval skincare messiah. I had a proper toolkit too. A rusted spoon to scrape scabs my own fingernails for fancy exfoliation, and a miracle cloth soaked in vinegar and foot fungus. I even made my own moisturizer, crushed mint and pig fat. Looked like pesto, smelled like sin. First client, oh, I remember. They called him Lord Assbreeze. Soon as he lifted his robe, maggots fell out from between his toes like rice from a broken sack. And there I was, kneeling professional, trying not to puke in my own mouth, saying, "Would Sir prefer a lavender scrub or a garlic rinse today? Spa experience, baby." But medieval style. And people think modern jobs suck. You sit in aircon and type emails. I scraped royal dandruff off butt cracks in the middle of a thunderstorm. Who's the real soldier here? Rash blossoms and foot funk forest. Now let me tell you, once you've scraped one nobleman's groin rash, you've scraped 'em all. But still, no two boils are ever truly the same. It's like gardening, really. Each infection blossoms in its own aromatic way. Some had horny rashes, not the sexy kind, mind you. I'm talking thick, crusty bastards like dragon scales, but smellier. Some were leaky, bubbly ones, ooze and pus like overcooked cheese. And then you got the flaky boys, where skin fell off in sheets like God was trying to make human baklava. One time I got called to the castle of Lord Puswick III. May his itchy soul rest in peace. That man hadn't washed his undercarriage in 3 years. 3 bloody years. When I pulled down his silk breeches, the smell hit me like a shovel. His thighs looked like burnt porridge glued onto raw bacon. The dead skin was so thick I had to use a bloody apple peeler to scrape it off. With each slice, it felt less like hygiene and more like preparing a corpse. I half expected a priest to pop up and start reading last rites over his crotch.
"Ah, Pete," he wheezed. "You've got a gentle touch." "Gentle, mate. I was scraping his bollocks with a kitchen utensil." But that's the thing, they loved it. They called it skin renewal or toxins leaving the body. I called it not pukin' while staring into Satan's armpit. And I was bloody good at it. Now, let's talk about the feet. Sweet suffering Christ, the feet. You ever smell a boot so old it grew its own ecosystem? That was every day for me. These lords wore leather boots year-round, no socks, no soap, just sweat and superstition. They believed that washing feet invited demons. Well, I met those demons, and they lived between the toes. Even with dried herbs stuffed up my nose like a bouquet, I could still smell the stank. Imagine a fermented mushroom stew left in a goat's armpit during summer. That was their natural foot scent. I called it eau de fungus royale. And yet I never complained. I had standards. I had pride. I once massaged 7 noble backs in one night using only a goat hairbrush and raw determination. I scraped their pustules, I drained their boils, and not once did I throw up on their silk sheets. That's what we call professionalism, baby. You know what they say, behind every clean nobleman is a peasant who nearly died gagging. And that peasant was me, scraping scabs, the art beneath the crust. Now we get to the real artistry, the Michelangelo bit of me career, scab scraping. Yeah, laugh all you want, but it takes a steady hand and the patience of a saint to peel a 3-year-old rash without sending dead skin flying into a noble's soup. That's when you know you've made it, when you're allowed near the queen's crusty spine and they trust you not to drop a single flake on their royal Persian carpet. I remember the day I reached me peak. Her Majesty, the Queen herself, called for me. Not the physician, not the barber-surgeon. Me, Pete, Lord of the Lice. Her back looked like a mosaic of sun-dried onion peels. I scraped each scab with a silver-plated oyster knife, slow, delicate strokes like a violinist, and caught every flake mid-air like it was confetti at a peasant wedding. I swear to God, not a single speck touched the rug. The butler clapped. The queen's corgi wagged its tail. I bowed so low, me nose touched me knee. And let's not forget Sir Thomas Toe Fungus. Now, there's a man whose feet were a whole damn ecosystem. Under his toenail lived what I can only describe as a colony. I scraped off the yellow crust and found a network of tunnels. Ants, actual living ants nesting in between his toes. One of them had a tiny stick. Might have been the mayor. I nearly asked for rent. Course, in this profession, ye get accused of all sorts. One time a noble accused me of harvesting lice to sell on the black market. I said, "My lord, if pubic lice had a resale value, I'd be a bloody tycoon." Imagine that, sneaking out of castles with a pouch full of crotch crabs and listing them at the market. 2 groats per ball tickler. But that's not the worst. Once, while I was down wiping a nobleman's bunions, the bastard let one rip right into me face, like a trumpet straight from Satan's arse.
My eyes watered me. Eyebrows curled, but I didn't even flinch. I just smiled and said, "My lord, the wind blows wild today, doesn't it?" That's what separates amateurs from professionals. Grace under gas. See, people think this job is all gunk and gags. But nah, it's theater. It's timing. It's knowing when to scrape and when to soothe. It's building trust with a man who smells like boiled cabbage and betrayal. It's smiling when your soul is crying. And it's always keeping one hand near your nose just in case. But hey, when you've held a queen's puss in your palm and survived a noble's nuked fart without blinking, you start feeling like royalty yourself. Medieval spa. Full scab, full lice, full soul. Now listen here, kids. You lot think going to a spa means lavender candles, soft piano, and some lady whispering deep breath in release your trauma. Pfft. Back in my day, a medieval spa meant three things: boils, bugs, and butt cracks. We didn't light no bloody scented candles. We lit burnt hair. That's right. We'd sweep up hairballs from under the chamber pot, twist 'em up like little rats light 'em, and let that aroma of toasted scalp waft through the room. Real ambiance. And the music. None of that Chopin shit. Our soundtrack was the sound of noblemen scratching their groins raw and moaning like war widows. I called it Symphony of the Scabs Movement 2. The crack itches back. We offered a 3-in-1 deluxe package, I tell ya. First, the scab shave. Gently scraping crust off your arse without slicing through the skin. Real art. Second, the back scratch. Nobles always had unreachable itches, bless 'em. Some of those backs hadn't seen a finger since the plague. Third, the herbal misting. I'd mix curry leaves soaked in piss-poor brandy and spritz it straight into their boils. They'd scream, but I'd say, "That's the toxins leaving your soul, my lord." But it weren't just about skin and slime. No, I was a therapist of the soulmate. Nobles would lie there half-naked and oozing, whispering their heartaches to me. One lady cried 'cause her husband didn't look at her anymore, not since the maggots moved into her thigh ulcer. One fella sobbed about the itch in his groin being a punishment from God for loving sheep more than his wife. I listened. I nodded. I handed them a chamomile tea that was mostly rainwater and beet piss. That's the peat promise. Now, not every day was smooth. There was this one time, I still blush remembering it, when I was drying a lord's foot pustule and accidentally wiped the ooze on the royal dining cloth. Didn't notice till His Majesty sat down for a lamb stew and asked, "What's this yellow streak?" Without missing a beat, I folded the cloth neatly bowed and said, "Your Majesty, bon appetit." The key is confidence. See, if you act like pus is perfume and lice are blessings, nobles will believe you. They don't know better. They thought exfoliate meant letting rats nibble your dead skin. And in the end, after all the groin grease and ghoul smells, I felt proud. I gave people peace. Even if they were covered in boils, they left smiling. Or maybe that was nerve damage. Either way, they felt something. That, dear listener, is the magic of medieval spa work. Ain't just a job, it's a full-body, full-spirit adventure. Beneath the skin, the rot of the rich. Now listen here. People think being a pus extractor's all about squeezing whiteheads and dancing with cysts, but no, mate. This job, it's soul work.
Skin deep bollocks. We go bone deep. We ain't just scrubbing crust. We're exfoliating pride, ego, and centuries of unwashed entitlement. Or, as I like to say, anyone can see the scab, but only the artist knows where pride becomes a pustule. I remember one royal gig. Oh, a real spiritual cleanse, that one. They brought me in for an exfoliation of divine importance. Turns out, it was for the princess. Poor lass hadn't bathed in 9 bloody years. Said if water touched her skin, her soul might evaporate like mist on a dragon's arse. So there I was on my knees, in a room thick with the scent of lavender and ancient cheese, rubbing her back with a goose feather glove, muttering prayers like a holy man with eczema. Dear Lord, if there's mold, let it infect me first, before it touches her royal arse. 9 years of fear and filth, mate. Her back had layers, literal layers. I peeled one patch off, and underneath it was a forgotten family crest. We discovered history in her dandruff, the royal lineage of Crostovia. But the worst was wintertime, foot day. They called me in to soak the feet of Duc de Sourteau, a man so rich his corns had servants. The water was colder than a nun's sigh. So cold, I swear it had feelings. I dipped his toes in it, and my hands froze mid-air like I'd offended a snow demon. Still I smiled and said, "Thank you, my lord, for the noble chance to lose all nerve function." He farted. I cried, "See, it ain't just grime we're washing off. It's the masks." Every scab we scrape from their dainty skin is a little lie peeled away. Underneath the powder and perfume, rot, ego rot, heart rot. Removing their boils is like peeling off their masks. Beneath the crust is the soul's infection. But I do it with love. I'm not just a scab scraper. I'm a truth digger, a flesh poet, an underpaid philosopher with athlete's foot. They think I'm some dirt hands, but really, I'm the last barrier between their decaying pride and full-blown face fungus. So next time you see a noble gliding past you with flawless skin and glowing cheeks, just know there's a man named Pete who once rubbed lavender oil on their butt crack and prayed not to die from fungal exposure. You're welcome. Scab scraper, the job of every stinky dream I've retired. Again, 3rd time if we're counting, left behind my trusty scab-scraping blade, my holy piss-stained towel, and that rusty wine bottle full of cow piss and rosemary, the finest medieval antiseptic this side of the latrine. I passed it all down to me apprentice. Sweet lad, born with no sense of smell, literally. His ma said when she shat herself giving birth, he didn't even cry, just blinked and grinned. That's how you know he's destined for greatness. Y'all sit in air-conditioned offices now crying over a missed deadline. Meanwhile, I once had to scrape moldy crotch scabs off a baron's left bollock during a hailstorm with no roof. Who's the real hero, eh? You go to spa, I go to scab. Print that on a shirt. But look, I'm not bitter, I'm nostalgic. This job, it changed me. Not just my immune system or the color of my teeth. Those were side effects. It changed my bloody soul. I've seen things, smelled things, things that'd make a plague doctor quit. But I've also felt things, like the warm gratitude of a knight who can finally sit without screaming.
or the gentle fart of a nun as you lift her robe to clean her boils. And if I've learned anything, it's this: scabs fall off. Dignity flakes. But purpose, that shit sticks, like foot rot in velvet. You don't choose the job. The job chooses you. And sometimes that job involves scraping pus off a duke's ass crack with a smile, wiping the king's royal arse. You think sucking pus from noble boils was the peak of humiliation? Ah, you sweet summer fool. That job was just foreplay. Let me take you deeper. I'm talking straight into the tunnel of power. Next stop, the royal shitter. You see, back in the days when kings were chosen by God, they didn't wipe their own bums. Oh no, mate. That would be beneath his holy anointed. Nah, they had a man for that. A proper gentleman. A groom of the stool, they called him. Sounds fancy, right? Like someone who brushes ponies. But no, his job wiping the royal arse after every divine dump. And who do you think did that job under King Henry VIII? That's right, me. Sir Shitty Pete, the Royal Rear End Relief Officer. Don't let the title fool you. It wasn't some back alley gig. This was an official position in the English court. Came with Chambers' salary and access to the king's most private moments, including his steaming shit logs. The king had this custom-built wooden throne, the close stool. Looked like a cushioned seat, but had a hole in the middle like a medieval toilet crossed with a Game of Thrones prop. Underneath, chamber pot. Behind him, me on my knees, warm cloth in hand, watching the royal browns drop like cannonballs from heaven. Was it humiliating? No, it was power. Raw, brown-stained power. You wipe a king's arse, you hear his secrets. You know when he's constipated and when he's planning war. You don't get closer to the throne than this, mate. Gen Z whines about toxic workplaces because their boss didn't say thanks on Slack. Me, I got hot diarrhea sprayed near my elbows after a royal eel banquet, and I showed up again the next morning with clean towels. Because in my day, loyalty meant sticking your face 2 feet from royalty's bumhole and calling it service to the crown. The Royal Toilet Diaries, a noble art. Let me tell you something most nobles wouldn't dare whisper. After a goblet of wine, the king's health lies not in his crown, but in his crap. And lucky for his royal majesty, there was one man trained in the ancient and sacred art of science. That man was me. Now, don't go thinking I was just wiping cheeks and whistling hymns. No. My job went far beyond that. I was the groom of the stool baby, the royal butt butler, the poop prophet, the Duke of Dung Diaries. See every morning when His Majesty sat his royal arse on the velvet-rimmed commode known as the close stool, I knelt behind like a knight ready to catch the Holy Grail. But instead of a golden chalice, I got a front row seat to the bowel ballet of a monarch who'd eaten one too many roasted swans. And here's where it gets real noble. I kept records. That's right, I kept a bloody shit journal. One entry read, "Stool of His Majesty this morn bore the texture of mulled porridge hue, of chestnut bark with a faint aroma akin to charred eel." I didn't just wipe. I analyzed. I observed. I reported. Why, you ask? Because in the days before MRIs and Apple Watches, your crap was your CV. The royal doctor would peek at my poop notes like he was decoding a secret prophecy. Constipated. Probably stressed from Parliament. Too runny might be the duck pate.
yellowish tint, possibly poison, or just another Tudor diet fad. As I always say, the king's heart may lie to his court, but his arse tells the truth to me. Modern jobs like content creators or data analysts. Pfft, you lot study online behavior. I studied digestive behavior. My analytics smelled worse, but meant more. While you dissect bounce rates and heat maps, I dissected stool consistency. While you track customer engagement, I tracked how often the king engaged his bowels. You have spreadsheets. I had shit sheets. And no, I wasn't mocked. I was respected. No man was closer to the king. Literally. Ministers feared me. Ladies envied me because I knew things they didn't. His Majesty might have kept his secrets from Parliament, but he couldn't keep them from his gut. So next time you think your job stinks, just remember some of us made a career out of actual shit. And we did it with honor, damn it. Now come along. I'll tell you how I once saved the kingdom just by sniffing a suspicious fart. The Great Royal Diarrhea Disaster. A royal flush gone wrong. Now I know what you're thinking, Pete. How bad can one royal dump be? Let me take you back to the darkest night of my professional career. The night of the 9 eels. It was a Tuesday. Cloudy skies, tension in the air, and King Alphonse the Flatulent decided he'd celebrate his birthday by eating 9 roasted eels stuffed with garlic cinnamon and what I suspect was powdered rat tail. I warned the cook. The cook warned the doctor. The doctor just shrugged and said, "Let him shit out his sins." Well, 2 hours later, the kingdom fell silent. Except for the toilet chamber, which became the front lines of a medieval apocalypse. It was me versus the king's exploding arse. Imagine this. Every 10 minutes, I had to change the royal cloth, like I was patching up wounds in a battlefield. The floor was slicker than a pig's back. The smell, like burnt onions dipped in grave juice. And the sounds like Satan gargling porridge. There was a moment, I kid you not, when I looked at the pile of mess and thought, should I just grab a page from the Magna Carta, wipe his arse with history, and call it even? And the king, oh, he moaned like a dying walrus, kept yelling stuff like, "God, smite me now." Mate, if God was in that room, he'd have fainted by the 3rd wave. I even wrote it down in the logbook, 'cause part of me job wasn't just mopping and gagging. I was also the king's personal shit historian. Date 17th of Grimfall. Stool watery cursed. Skin pale, lips dry. King displeased. I more so. My mates now, they work in market research. Pete, they tell me we analyze consumer behavior. Right, I analyzed behavior too, only mine came out steaming. Let's be honest, y'all can keep your fancy offices, your data sheets, your KPIs. I lived through royal hell with a towel. I saw things no man should see, heard sounds that haunt me sleep, smelled sins, and yet I was proud. 'Cause no matter how majestic or powerful a king may be, his arsehole is still mortal. Now, if you'll excuse me, just remembering that night makes my nose twitch. Oops, wrong towel. Tales of a toilet slave. Now listen here, lads and lasses. This ain't just a job story. This is a cautionary tale. A lesson from the underbelly of royal hygiene. It was one of them God-forsaken hot summer days in the castle.
The kind where your arse sticks to stone benches, and even Satan himself would beg for a breeze. Me, I was on towel duty as always. See, back then, kings didn't wipe. They got wiped, and I, noble Sir Pete of the Porcelain Order, was the chosen hand. That day, the king had just finished what I'd call a Category 5 royal release. A monstrous dump, sticky, sweaty, angry, like it was forged in hell's own gut. I wiped, I folded, I chucked the towel aside like a war casualty. Done right. Wrong. I step outside. Sun's blazing. Sweat dripping in my eyes. I reach for my forehead towel. Except, plot twist, it was the bloody ass towel. The same one that had been down in the king's crack not 5 minutes earlier. And now it's pressed against my damn forehead like a crown of shitty thorns. Did I gag? Yes. Did I scream? A little. But the worst part, someone saw. Of course they did. And not just anyone. Lady Margaret, that gossipy bat from court, who probably ran straight to the Queen, like Your Highness, the bum boy just facialed himself with royal poo, so the punishment came swift. 3 days, out in the courtyard. No shade, no water, no dignity. Just me, sunburned, humiliated, and sweating out my sins like a pig in a pottery kiln. Let me tell you something. The cost of wiping the wrong end of royalty isn't just infection. It's public shaming heat stroke and a lifetime of being known as shit-faced Pete. Now, some of you work in marketing, yeah? You deal with brand crisis. You think missing a deadline ruins your career. Try mixing up the king's ass towel with your own head towel and see what brand crisis really smells like. My job was to wipe royal cheeks, not to wipe out my reputation. So kids, take it from me. Always label your towels. Never assume anything smells like success. Because sometimes success smells like the king's backside. And if you think your boss is full of shit, imagine mine. I had the data to prove it. The job that wiped itself into legend. After all the shit-slinging disasters, the heat stroke punishments, and the traumatizing diarrhea symphonies, you'd think I'd quit this job and run off to become a jester or a plague corpse collector. But no, I stayed. 'Cause one day, history changed. And it was me bum job that earned me a seat at the royal fucking table. See, I wasn't just some shit-stained peasant anymore. I became the trusted royal wiper. Capital letters, you twats. The king himself, the mighty fart-slinger of England, took a liking to me. Why? 'Cause when you wipe a man's arse every day, you don't just know his diet. You know his soul. I knew when the king was constipated just by the way he walked. I could smell treason in his farts. And in those quiet moments on the chamber pot, when the throne beneath his cheeks was the only throne that mattered, he talked to me, a peasant, about politics, nightmares, his childhood goat. I was his toilet therapist. He once looked me dead in the eyes, sweaty and pale mid-shit, and said, "You are the only man who's seen me at my weakest and stayed loyal." That line stuck with me more than the smell on my fingernails. From then on, things changed. I got a silk robe, still smelled like lavender and guilt. I had my own seat at the royal feasts. Not at the main table, mind you, but a proper wooden chair, not just a bucket flipped upside down. Children in the palace whispered my name like I was a legend. That's Shitty Pete, the man who wipes but never whines. Even the Queen once nodded at me. Or maybe she just sneezed. Still counts. I even made it into the royal records. My job title, Sanitary Officer of the Sovereign Southern Gate. Fancy as fuck, right? And through all this glory, one thing remained true. I'm the only man who's wiped the royal arse and lived to tell the tale. So laugh all you want, nobles and peasants alike. My legacy ain't built on swords or scrolls. It's built on loyalty, calloused hands, and an iron stomach. And in the end, I didn't just clean shit. I cleaned up my bloody destiny. Tales from the royal rear. Pete's final wipe. You know what, after all the shit? Quite literally, I've wiped through, I ain't bitter. Nah, I'm proud. Not proud like one of them nobles who gets a statue for marrying their cousin. No. I'm proud in the quiet, stinky way only a royal arse cleaner can be. I touched the king's ass, and I still kept my dignity. Let that sink in. Not many can say that. Most folks who got that close either got their heads chopped off or caught a venereal disease so bad they shat out their intestines. But me, I held steady. Firm hand, soft cloth, no fear. And now, look at the world, young folk out there, embarrassed to serve coffee or mop a floor. Meanwhile, I was elbow deep in royal butt crack, and I walked away with my spine straight. Nowadays, someone films themselves crying over a broken nail and calls it content. You call yourself an influencer bitch. I influenced royal bowels. Gen Z, listen close. I wiped literal shit for a living. I bathed in the backside secrets of power. But I never once said I'm above this. Know why? 'Cause work is work. And a clean arsehole can change the course of history. Don't believe me? Try watching a war meeting when the king's got swamp ass. Spoiler, he won't focus on maps when his cheeks are clapping with discomfort. See, I learned something down there in the royal chamber of doom. Life stinks, sometimes more, sometimes less. But even in the filth, you can wring out a bit of pride. Even if your job is shit, you don't have to feel like shit. I may not have gold land or a last name that don't sound like a fart, but I've got stories. I've got scars. I've got a stained tunic and a slightly bent pinky from an incident I will never speak of. But most importantly, I've got honor. Wrinkled, smelly, but mine. So, remember this, kids. You can't choose the hand life gives you, but you can choose what you wipe with it. And me, I wipe the royal arse with pride. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to soak my hands in vinegar. Again, royal butt wiper, certified national cleaner since 1342. Royal armpit fan. When royal stench must be blown, with your mouth, the smell of power. Right then, you think your job is shit, you think that unpaid internship at your uncle's crypto startup was the lowest point of your life. Nah, try mouth-blowing sweat off a grown man's hairy royal pits while he's burping up duck fat and scratching his bollocks like he's searching for treasure. That's not a job. That's state-sponsored humiliation. Welcome to the next episode of Why Medieval Life Was Basically Hell, with bonus syphilis. Today's noble profession, the royal armpit fan. A job so exclusive, only the stinkiest could survive it. You see, kings back then didn't have deodorant. They had power. And power means sweat. Buckets of it. After 3 hours of dancing, feasting, jousting, and aggressively judging peasants, them royal robes were soaked like a knight's jockstrap. After dragon yoga, And guess whose job it was to dry the king's underarms before his pits fermented into royal cheese ding-ding? That's right, some poor sod with a tiny fan and a big mouth. You didn't just fan the king, you became the fan. And if you think that's gross, let me introduce you to the royal tagline blow for the king, or be blown away by the executioner. Honestly, I'd have taken the axe. At least it's quicker. There was even an armpit apprenticeship. 3 bloody years of learning to breathe shallow, hold your gag reflex, and recognize the scent of royal gout. Lesson 1. Never inhale deeply. Lesson 2. Always pretend the smell reminds you of power. Lesson 3. If the king farts while you're mid-blow, just cry silently. You lot cry about unpaid internships. You only got me coffee. You didn't pay me, mate. I paid them to learn how to sniff nobility. Tuition. 1 goat, 2 chickens, and my dignity. But hey, I got promoted from left armpit intern to right armpit lead technician. Biggest regret of my life. So buckle up, my sweet Gen Z sniffers, because today we dive nose first into the steamy crevices of royal hygiene. Hold your breath, but not too long. Them armpits are waitin'. The stinky truth behind the job. Now let's not beat around the sweaty bush. You lot think being a royal armpit fan meant waving a fancy feather from a distance like some elegant peacock do ya bollocks. It meant getting on your bloody knees, facing a duke's dripping underarms after 3 days of wine roast boar and no bloody bath. And if you coughed mid-blow, it was treason. Picture this. It's midnight. The king's just done 20 rounds of jousting, shagged his 4th mistress, and eaten a turkey the size of a war horse. He's sweating like a cursed pig in July. You, the humble fanboy, must bow low, lean in, and start the sacred blowin', gentle puffin', at first like you're coaxing a candle. Then, if His Majesty's pits are bubbling with royal swamp juice, you go full-mouth tornado. Turbo mode. Get that airflow spinning like your life depends on it. Because, spoiler alert, it does. There were official ranks, mind you. Apprentice, fanboy, squire of stench. And if you didn't die of pink lung or syphilitic breath, you might just make it to chief blower to the crown. I once met a lad what made it that far. He couldn't taste food for the last 11 years of his life. But by God, he had a pension. Don't laugh, Gen Z. You cry when Starbucks forgets your oat milk. I once passed out from sniffing Her Majesty's pit after she'd eaten 3 helpings of fermented mutton stew. 1 nostril caught rosemary, the other caught rotten sheep. I woke up 3 days later face down under the palace piss bucket. Still had to clock in next morning.
And don't go thinking they didn't believe in hygiene. Oh no, these posh bastards thought sweating was healthy. They'd shout, "My body releases evil spirits through my divine moisture." Meanwhile, I'm blowing like a bellows while trying not to gag on Satan's foot cheese. Baths. Pfft. Once a month if you were lucky. Nobles doused themselves in perfume so thick I once mistook a duchess for a lavender-scented corpse. You'd rather smell death than her arse after dancing. And the worst bit? No tools, no fans with motors, no battery-charged anything. Just your lungs. Your poor, unfiltered medieval lungs. These days, you lot wear them portable fans round your necks, all posh and rechargeable.
I had one working molar and wind powered by desperation. So next time you whine about an unpaid internship, remember this. I once paid a priest 10 silver coins to teach me how to blow better without faintin'. Called it the divine art of gust. Said it was holy work, a holy load of arse. Class system of stench. Now listen here, 'cause even in the business of sniffing sweaty pits, there's rank. Yup, the royal court had a whole bloody system for who gets to blow air up whose armpit. It weren't just sniff and go. No. It was a stinking pyramid of pain with me down at the bottom blowing for crusty coins and sinus infections. First up, the king's pit. Blowing under His Majesty's arm was the top gig. Why? 'Cause the king got all the best powders, oils, and some poor lad wiping his sweat hourly. The king's pit smelled like warm nutmeg mixed with holy wine. Not bad, really. Plus, you got a gold-tipped feather fan and a meal token if he didn't fart while you knelt. Classy. Next, the Queen's Pit. Now this one's where your nose went to die. The Queen loved her perfume, aye, but under that rotten onions and funeral flowers. One minute, it's roses, next minute, it's... Is that a dead goat? And she'd smile the whole time like it was a spa day. Blowing there was dangerous. I passed out once from the fumes and woke up with a priest giving me last rites. Then there's the princess. Ah, forbidden fruit. No one was allowed to blow air on the princess. Too holy, they said. But I had a cold once right. Just a little sneeze while standing nearby. Boom. Got flogged in front of the castle cat. My arse still whistles when I sit down. We had a crew, too. A pit squad, if you will. There was old Ralph, the pit whisperer. He'd claim he could tell your social class by your smell. That's low-born cheese sweat, he'd say, sniffing like a fine wine taster. Ralph once got promoted for correctly guessing a noble's rank based on pit crust alone. Poor Timmy, the squire's sniffer. He weren't so lucky. One day he got sent to Countess Margaret's underarm. Let's just say she had a case of Royal Camus boil rot. He coughed up pus for a week and then shat himself straight into heaven. God rest his brave, stinky soul. You think your office job is hell? You sit through 40 PowerPoint slides while your boss smells like cologne and broken dreams. I sniffed a Duke's eczema and got tipped in toenail dust. Oh, and we even had a chart. The Royal Armpit Stink Index. Mild Nutmeg King. Old Duck Soup Queen. Goat Farm in July Duke. Satan's Laundry Basket. Baron. Hell's Armpit Cardinal. And that's how it went. A life of class, stank, and blowin' for the rich. But hey, better than cleanin' chamber pots. At least the pits didn't bite back. When the king sweats, the kingdom trembles. You ever been so close to power that you could smell it? No, not metaphorically. I mean literally, like nose to armpit close. That's how I, Pete the Pit Sniffer, climbed up the dung ladder of medieval society. While others swung swords, I sniffed greatness from the left pit of His Majesty himself. One steamy summer, I got promoted. Why? Not 'cause I was smart, not 'cause I was brave, but because I didn't faint when the king raised his royal arm and let the funk fly free. The other lads puked. I inhaled with pride. King said to me once, right after a joust, "And 3 legs of mutton Pete, you're the only soul who's seen me weak. and didn't gag. That's trust. That's power. That's how I ended up with my own silk robe and a front row seat at the royal orgies. Y'all get corporate pizza Fridays. I got sweaty secrets and a hot place to sit. You see, under those sweaty royal robes lies more gossip than the Queen's ladies-in-waiting. While I was down there powdering his pit, the king would mumble all sorts of madness. These bloody taxes will get me killed. Mistress Agnes thinks I'm fat. And this damn hemorrhoid has its own heartbeat. A lot of blokes think power is about gold and thrones. Nah, real power is knowing the king cries after sword fights. Real power is knowing which arm stinks more, depending on stress levels. I'm not a servant. I'm a walking pressure gauge. People say soft power is diplomacy. I say it's wiping royal sweat while pretending not to hear him fart. Picture it, me on my knees patting his chest with lavender oil, while the king's tears mix with armpit juice. Both of us letting out tiny farts under torchlight like two tired walruses in silk. Nowadays, companies go on and on about loyalty, team culture, servant leadership. What a joke. At least I got a front row seat to power. What do you get? A performance review and a bag of stale donuts. So yeah, when the king sweats, the whole kingdom trembles. But I sniff and smile. 'Cause when your nose is in the armpit of power, no one sees you coming. The royal perks and punishments. Now you'd think working for the king would be all velvet pillows and free turkey legs. Right, that's what I thought too. Until I got promoted from pit fanboy to official royal armpit guardian. Sounds fancy, but really just meant I got blamed if His Majesty got swamp rot under his arms. But hey, it came with perks. First off, I got my own bloody seat at the festival right next to the royal goat handler and slightly in front of the guy who wipes the queen's feet. Status, baby. Then came the shiny badge, the armpit of valor. A golden brooch shaped like a sweat drop. Ain't that poetic? And they even fixed my teeth, which basically meant yanking out the black ones and hammering in some carved sheep bones. Close enough. And women. Suddenly, they were sniffing around me like hungry dogs near a butcher's cart. One whispered, "He smells like authority and cheese." Honestly, that's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. But with great sweat comes great danger. One day during the annual pit blessing ceremony, don't ask, I noticed something strange. The towel was soaked, but not in the usual salty glory. No, this stank like crushed berries and piss. It was poison. Some rival servant tried to take me out. Death by so what did I do? I licked the towel. Yeah, I panicked all right. I thought maybe if I tasted it, I'd know what kind of poison it was. Bold move or brain rot, jury's still out. But I survived, got a rash. Lost my sense of smell for a week. Still counts as a win. I'm probably the only man in England who can say I've wiped royal pits, survived an assassination, and still got laid after. And you modern folks think your job's tough because your boss double texts you at 9 p.m. At least I got a silk robe and front row seat at the orgy. Y'all get a pizza party and a thank you email. Truth is, being close to power's like licking a toad. Might get you high, might get you dead, or in my case, famous. Some folks get verified by grinding on TikTok. Me, I got verified by the Pope himself for being the best
pit licker in the realm. Now, that's influence. The breath of legends. You know, when most folks die, they leave behind a sword, a poem, or a few bastard kids running around pretending not to look like them. Me, I left behind armpits, dry, fragrant, untainted by the stink of war gout or royal cheese sweat. That's me bloody legacy. Now don't laugh. Keeping a king's pits fresh was no small task. That man sweated like a pig in a sauna and smelled like one too. But I did it. Day in, day out. With nothing but a rag, a prayer, and a will to survive. People think serving royalty is all feasts and feather beds. Ha! Try crawling under a 400-pound monarch with a cloth and a dream, then get back to me. I didn't just blow air. I blew life back into that throne. My lungs were royal property, my nose, a national treasure, and my dignity. Well, that left the building years ago. But I'll tell you something true. Blowing on power don't make you weak. It makes you bloody clever if you live through it. Cowards hide from power. Survivors ventilate it. Sometimes I think about writing a book. Title it be How to Survive Royal Stench and Still Gain Respect. Chapter 1. Know your Lord's left pit from right. Chapter 2. If he farts, don't flinch. Chapter 3. Always keep a spare rag in your sock. And you lot today complain about working from home. Home. I worked from under a king. While you sit on your Zoom calls in pajamas, I was dodging royal dandruff and unexpected back hair. So shut it. You want wisdom. Here it is. You may never be rich. You may never be famous. And Lord knows you'll never be clean. But if you're gonna die poor, then die smelling like power. Make 'em remember your stink, or lack of it. And that's the tale of old Shitty Pete, the royal armpit fan. The man who stood closest to the throne without getting beheaded or pregnant. God's own blow-dryer. History's most loyal pit polisher. So if you ever think your job sucks, just remember I made a career out of airing out other people's body parts. And still walked away with my head, my pride sort of, and a badge that says Armpit of Valor. Go on then, blow your own legend into the world. Just make sure it don't stink. Nobleman's mistress. You ever wondered why my name rings bells in some of the filthiest castles across medieval Europe? No, well, too fucking bad. 'Cause let me tell you a story about how I became the royal louse picker, the Michelangelo of scratching noble asses. Some twat once asked me, Pete, how the hell did you get famous? And I said, because I once plucked a louse egg from the queen's butt crack. And she didn't even flinch, moan, or fart. That's what you call talent love. See, back in them days, lice weren't just a problem. They were a fucking way of life. You'd be scratching your nethers in church palace battlefield or even in bed with your 12th arranged spouse. Even the kings had lice, and not the commoner ones. We're talking royal blood-sucking purebred fuckers that wore powdered wigs and demanded wine. Now don't get it twisted. Today you lot go to spas, wax your bushes, bleach your arses, and get cucumbers shoved up your pores for hydration. But back then, skincare was just scratching until your skin peeled off. People's stank baths were monthly if you were lucky, and shampoo was just piss mixed with prayer. Rats had better hygiene than half the dukes I worked for. But instead of fixing that, what did the nobles do? They hired people like me. The blessed, the chosen,
The finger-fucking-dexterous royal louse pickers. And let me tell ya, this wasn't no casual back scratch. This was a profession, a sacred art, a divine dance between itch and relief. You needed the precision of a falcon, the gentleness of a midwife, and the courage of a man who stared directly into a lord's hairy groin. Sometimes I'd spend hours parting through pubes, thicker than horse manes, looking for the tiny white pearls of Satan's sperm, louse eggs, plucking 'em one by one. Sometimes I sang while I did it, a little hum to calm the sphincter. Hell, one duchess said my fingers were like angels performing a ballet on her back dimples. That same night, her husband offered me a bonus, a warm potato and a dead beetle for my necklace. Classy. Anyway, scratching was serious business. In a time when reading was a sin and soap was a myth, scratching at the right moment, in the right fucking place, was worth more than literacy. So buckle in, you fresh-smelling Gen Z fluffers, 'cause I'm taking you deep into the dirty world of medieval lice, where royal assholes itched like the gates of hell, and only I could bring them salvation. Let's go. The louse-picking trade. It's not just scratching. Look, if you think this job's just about itching and scratching, you're dead wrong. Being a royal louse picker, it's a whole damn science, a mix of detective work, surgery, and patience of a saint. It ain't just scratch here, scratch there. No. You gotta find, pry, squeeze, and kill those little bastards. Imagine hunting tiny, sneaky ninjas that live rent-free in the thickest jungle known to man, your lord's armpit, or God forbid his royal crack. Here's how it went down. First, you start with your tools, most of the time just your bare fingers, calloused and sharp from years of work. Sometimes you get fancy and use a comb. Not just any comb, mind you. A fishbone comb specially designed to comb through thick hair and trap the little monsters. Next comes the wrist action. You don't just dig around like a madman. You twist your wrist at a precise 45-degree angle. Don't ask me why, but it works. That angle, it's like the secret handshake between you and the louse. Then you carefully brush the hair back against the grain. This is crucial because the lice love to hide deep under the strands. By brushing the hair backwards, you expose their hideouts, like lifting a curtain on a terrible crime scene. Now comes the delicate part, the egg picking. You gotta pluck those tiny white eggs out one by one. Like fishing for pearls in a murky swamp. It's like trying to grab tapioca pearls out of your milk tea without squishing them. One wrong move and the egg bursts, ruining the whole batch and your reputation. You see, the mark of a true louse-picking artist is this. You can pick out every single louse egg without popping a single one. Ko makong lam ren no. That's the golden rule in our trade. If you pop one well, you might as well hand in your resignation and start selling turnips. Sometimes the stakes get higher. The nobility didn't just want relief. They wanted perfection. A louse picked too harshly meant hours of suffering for them and a quick exit for you. So you had to be gentle, precise, and quick. And don't think the job was all fun and games. Lice eggs stuck to your fingers' hair and even your clothes. You walked around smelling like a bug hotel with no thanks. But hey, compared to the smell of the nobles themselves, you were practically a walking air freshener. So yeah, it wasn't just scratching, it was art, science, and survival all rolled into one dirty little job. Stick with me, 'cause the story's only getting itchier. class system of scratching. Even itching has ranks. Now you might think scratching is just scratching. One spot is as good as another. Right. Wrong. In the royal bug-picking business, even scratching has ranks. Let me break it down for you. Level 1. Head scratching. This is the most common gig. Everyone's got lice somewhere on their noggin, so there's plenty of work. It's low risk, mostly because you're far from the danger zones. You just gently comb through the hair, pluck some bugs, and keep the Lord's wig from turning into a nest. Sure, it's itchy and gross, but nobody's gonna lose their head over a little scalp tickle. Level 2, armpit scratching. Now we're getting into funkier territory. The pits are a little nastier, and the smell, let's just say it's like a mix of old cheese and forgotten socks baking in the sun. But the armpit job has its perks. It's usually quicker and pays a bit better. Still, you gotta have stamina to handle the natural perfume of nobility. Level 3, the forbidden zone. This is where the real cash and real danger live. The royal nether regions are a no-go zone for most. Only the bravest or the most desperate take this gig. One wrong move, and you don't just lose your job, you might lose your manhood. I'm serious. The stakes are that high. I remember my own baptism by scratch when I was assigned to pick lice for the young princess. She was 14, going through all the awkward phases, acne, mood swings, and that hormonal itch no one warned me about. One slip of the wrist, and I swear I almost got sent packing. Permanently. Let's just say the guards were none too pleased when I accidentally grazed the wrong spot. Because, here's the thing, each zone has its own specialists. No scratching outside your lane, or you're risking more than just a bad reputation. Mixing up your targets could mean a beating or worse, a quick trip to the dungeon. The funny part, the princess later sent me a thank you note, signed with a doodle of a flea. Classy, right? This hierarchy made the job more bearable and more structured. You knew your place and who to call when the itch got too sensitive. So yes, scratching ain't just a simple task. It's a whole career ladder with its own politics, dangers, and rewards. Stay tuned, 'cause the next part gets even itchier and messier. The lice business. Cutthroat competition. All right, now let me tell you the royal lice-picking game. It ain't all fancy fingers and gentle scratches. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, full of sneaky tricks and wild competition. First off, every picker out there was hustling hard with their sales pitch. Scratch smooth, no pain, kill all the little buggers, and free baby lice. Yeah, you heard that right. Free baby lice. Like it was some kind of bonus prize. People thought it was clever marketing, but really, it was just desperate. Now, to win the favor of the royal court, you had to bring something special to the table, like catching a rare black louse. This wasn't your everyday itch bug. Nah, this little guy was like the holy grail of lice. Super rare and super nasty. If you snatched one of those bad boys, you'd get a shiny reward. Pete once told me how some pickers got so proud they'd turn their prized black lice into keychains. Yeah, keychains. Like trophies you hang on your belt to show off your battlefield victories. But the competition didn't stop there. There was always that one poor sap who got careless and paid the price. Pete remembers the time he nearly got poisoned just for scratching the queen's scalp without washing his hands first. Apparently, the queen's hair had some nasty herbal poison mixed in to keep pests away. One wrong move, and Bam Pete was down for days, feeling like a sack of rotten eggs. "Gotta wash your hands, lads," he warned, "or you might end up kissing the castle's dirt sooner than you think." It wasn't just about skill. It was about survival. Every scratch could be your last if you weren't sharp enough. And the drama. Oh, the drama. Pickers would gossip, sabotage, and sometimes even swap lice between clients just to ruin reputations. One time, Pete caught a rival trying to plant fleas on his royal client. Talk about dirty tricks. But through all the madness, the royal lice business was a real grind. You had to be fast, gentle, and a little bit sneaky. So next time you complain about your annoying little itches or those expensive spa treatments, just remember, back in the day, these folks had to pick lice out of some of the fanciest, stinkiest heads in the kingdom, sometimes with poison on their fingers. And they did it all with a smile, or at least a grimace that looked like a smile. That's the royal lice-picking business for your cutthroat gross, but strangely honorable. Licey and the nobility, a love they can't escape. You might think lice are just nasty little bugs, right? Nah, in the royal courts back then, they were way more than that. Lice were actually a status symbol. The more hair you had, the more lice you got. And that meant you were richer than the guy with a shiny, bald head. Yeah, weird flex, but true. Pete would say, if you had a thick mane full of lice, you basically wore a badge that screamed, "I'm the big shot here." On the flip side, poor folks, they were mostly lice-free. Not because they were clean, but because they didn't have enough hair or skin to host those little freeloaders. No hair, no lice. Simple math. There's this one story Pete always tells that cracks me up every time. There was a king, let's call him King Baldy, who got deposed not because he was a bad ruler, but because he had too few lice. People started whispering he was just some commoner wearing a crown for laughs. No lice meant no royal blood, apparently. One day, the court official shouted, "How can a man rule us if he can't even keep his head properly infested?" And just like that, King Baldy got kicked out. Only in the Middle Ages, huh? Now think about it. Today's Gen Z spends hours waxing, plucking, and layering on serums like they're prepping for a sci-fi movie. Meanwhile, Pete and his crew, they just had their bare hands, a dirty comb, and a soul that might have been long dead from all the stink and itch. No fancy lotions, no lasers, Pete would say. Just fingers and guts. It's kinda poetic when you think about it. Lice were the royal bling of the day. And if you didn't have them, people thought you were faker than a $3 coin. So next time you complain about that one stubborn pimple or ingrown hair, remember Pete's world, where lice were a sign you belonged to the top shelf of society, even if that shelf smelled like a barnyard. That's the twisted love story between lice and the nobility, a bond no king or queen could ever shake off, no matter how much they scrubbed. The legacy of scratching. Some folks leave behind castles, some leave behind battles. Me, I left a pair of golden fingernails, once touched the royal crown jewels without letting a single louse escape. That's right. Golden fingers trained in the sacred art of lice-picking. Pete's final lesson: scratch the right spot at the right time, and you just might save a life. Scratch the wrong spot? Well, then you're looking at a one-way ticket to the chopping block. It's a job where precision meets danger, a weird mix of surgeon and assassin, but for bugs. Fast forward to today. People pay big bucks to get their skin zapped by fancy machines or sit in spas with calming music. Back in my day, it was just Pete and his two magic index fingers doing the dirty work. No machines, no candles, just skill guts and a hell of a lot of patience. I wasn't a doctor, Pete says proudly. I was a fur whisperer, a psychic for lice, hearing their tiny breaths and guiding them gently to the afterlife. And that, my friends, is how you become a legend in the lice-picking business. So next time you itch your head, think of Pete, the man who turned scratching into an art form and survived to tell the tale. Because in this messy world, sometimes it's the smallest battles that leave the biggest marks. Collecting and tasting urine. So after dealing with all those disgusting royal pits and stinky louse picking, you might think the job can't get any messier. But oh, my friend, welcome to the golden era. The time when I became the village's official urine collector. Yeah, you heard me right. Urine, pee. That yellow, nasty, magical liquid everyone dumps without a second thought. But back then, it was worth more than gold if you knew how to handle it. Picture this me, Pete, lugging around a battered aluminum bucket, yelling at the top of my lungs. Who just peed? Don't throw it away. Hand it over to Pete. People stared like I was some kind of monster, like I'd just come back from the plague or worse. But guess what? I was the one making real money in the village while they just stood there wiping their noses. Now before you wrinkle your nose, hear me out. Urine was pure gold in the Middle Ages. They used it for all sorts of things, washing clothes, bleaching linen white, even brushing teeth. Yeah, you heard right. Brushing teeth with pee. If you think that's nasty, consider that it actually worked. The ammonia in urine was a natural cleaner and disinfectant. People treasured it like their life depended on it, because honestly, it kinda did. One time I accidentally grabbed a bucket of beer instead of pee. Thought I hit the jackpot. Took it home, poured it into the cooking pot, and everyone went, "Hey, that smells kinda nice." Turns out the whole family ate porridge with a weird, fragrant twist that day. Lesson learned. Always check your buckets twice, especially when dealing with liquids that look like gold. And for all you city slickers complaining about your tap water being a little yellow or smelling funny. Well, back in my day, I was stomping through muddy fields carrying entire barrels of soldier's pee. I didn't see anyone complain then. If it's good enough to clean royal armor and keep the village laundry spotless, it's good enough for you. So yeah, it's a dirty, smelly job, but it's honest work and it paid the bills. As I like to say, pee is love for nature and golden for the soul. And that, my friends, is how I went from being just some scruffy villager to the master of golden streams, urine collector, a job full of challenges and pro tips. Listen, being the village's official urine collector was no walk in the park. Every day I lugged my trusty aluminum bucket through the streets shouting like a maniac. Fresh pee, anyone. Don't toss it. Give it to Pete. People gave me weird looks. Some laughed, others just shook their heads like I was nuts. But hey, that golden liquid was serious business. My mission: to gather the freshest, purest urine possible. Why? Because old urine stinks, sours, and turns into a mess. Nobody wants to touch, let alone use, to wash their clothes or brush their teeth. So fresh was the key word. But oh boy, people weren't always cooperative. Some sneaky villagers tried to pour their pee down the drain the moment they heard my call. Others mixed it up accidentally, like one time a drunken soldier emptied his bucket into mine. Imagine my face when I thought I'd hit the jackpot, only to realize I'd been carrying a barrel of stinky battle brew. Despite that, I set up what I proudly called my Golden Stream Station, a spot near the market where folks could come relieve themselves and support Old Pete's hustle. It was part convenience, part community event. People would show up, tell stories, and leave me a tip for keeping their linens clean and their teeth shiny. My slogan, "Pee for the planet, gold for the wallet," handling the urine wasn't just about scooping and carrying. It required skill like a chef handling a delicate sauce. I learned how to store it properly so it didn't go sour too fast. I kept the buckets shaded covered and moved fast, because nobody wants spoiled pee. Transporting it over rough cobblestone streets was an art, balancing the load without sloshing precious liquid everywhere. Of course, not all customers were thrilled. Some complained about the smell, especially when the wind shifted just right. I got yelled at more times than I can count for stinking up the village, but the job had to be done. Besides, who else was gonna do it? Here's a fun fact in those times. If you wanted white shirts, clean teeth, and well-tanned leather, you needed urine. People didn't bat an eye about its origin. They just appreciated the results. Now, fast forward to today. You might grumble about your tap water looking a bit yellow or smelling funny. I meanwhile used to haul full buckets of soldiers' urine straight from the battlefield back to the village. Smelled like victory, if victory smelled like pee. So if you think your job is rough, just remember this. There was a guy named Pete who collected pee daily, kept the town's laundry fresh, and did it all without losing his mind. Or his nose. Because in the grand scheme, sometimes the dirtiest jobs bring the cleanest results. The pee tasters, when you become a medieval taste doctor. All right, so after hustling around collecting golden streams all day, you'd think the worst job was over, right? Nope. Here comes the weirdest gig of all, being the official royal urine taster. Yeah, that's right. Back in the Middle Ages, doctors didn't have fancy labs or blood tests. No, sir. They relied on one crazy skill-tasting pee. And trust me, it's as nasty and important as it sounds. Now, you might be thinking, how the hell do you taste someone's pee without puking? Well, that's where the real art comes in. It wasn't just about sticking your nose in and sniffing. Nope. The pros had to sip it, like some kind of vile wine, swirling it around to catch all the little clues, the color, the smell, and yes, the taste. Because apparently each disease had its own special pee flavor. You see, the urine wasn't just yellow stuff, it was a secret message from inside the body. If the pee was pinkish, that meant blood was leaking somewhere. Pete's joke, pink pee. That's a royal warning. You're peeing blood, or maybe the kidneys are throwing a party. If it was cloudy white, they called it the spirit of goblins hiding in the bladder. Yeah, the medieval docs loved their ghost stories. And of course, there was always someone trying to cheat the system. One time I got tricked into tasting pee mixed with grape wine. I took a big gulp and suddenly felt like I was drunk off my ass. Thought, well, this patient's definitely in trouble. Turns out I just got fooled by some sneaky grape juice. I nearly diagnosed him with liver failure. Talk about embarrassing. Nowadays, you kids sip fancy detox teas and herbal brews to cleanse your insides, right? Well, back in my day, we downed piss like it was a medicine menu.
I'm not saying it tasted good, but hey, it helped doctors figure out if you were about to keel over or just had a nasty cold. And I gotta admit, tasting pee took serious guts. Sometimes the stink was so bad I wanted to run for the hills. But quitting. No way. If you spit out the sample, that's it. Your medical career's done before it even started. You gotta grit your teeth, swallow the nasty gulp, and pretend you're savoring some expensive wine. Yes? I detect subtle notes of kidney infection with a bouquet of rot. That was me trying to keep my dignity intact while my insides begged for mercy. Being a pee taster wasn't just about grossing out your friends. It was a respected job, and the better you were, the more famous you got. The doctors would brag about their palate, like sommeliers at a fancy wine tasting. Some would even demand fresh pee straight from the royal bladder. No sitting around allowed. Imagine waiting for the king to take a leak just so you could get your next sample. Talk about pressure. So yeah, this was one medieval job that really tested your bravery, your stomach, and your poker face. You had to be part detective, part sommelier, and part superhero who could survive drinking the royal... Well, you know. Next time you complain about your health checkups or blood tests, just remember somewhere in history people were getting paid to drink pee for a living, and they did it with pride. The stinky truth behind the job, drowning in scents and fluids. All right, let me spill the tea, well, more like the pee, about what it really means to be a royal urine taster. It ain't just about taking a sip and saying, "Yep, that's yellow." Nah, Pete's job was to dive deep into a sea of smells, colors, and flavors that would make even the toughest gladiator gag. Every disease had its own signature stench. Got a nasty infection. The pee would reek like rotten eggs left out in the sun for a week. Diabetes. Oh man, you'd swear someone squeezed a sack of sour grapes in that cup. And then there was the royal bouquet of diseases nobody wanted to mention, where the pee looked like swamp water and smelled like a mix of burnt cheese and despair. I'm telling you, you needed a stomach made of steel and a nose that didn't quit. One time, Pete got handed a cup from some noble with what he called the plague of the century. The moment the lid popped off, the whole room wanted to evacuate. But Pete, he just took a deep breath, puffed up his chest, and dove right in like a champ. The poor noble's pee had the color of muddy river sludge and the aroma of 1,000 rotting onions. I swear I tasted what felt like a war zone in that little cup. And let me tell you, this job came with stories that would curl your toes. There were moments when the patients were so sick that their pee was thick, dark, and downright terrifying. But hey, that's when the job mattered the most. Knowing what was killing a king or queen could save a kingdom, or at least postpone their death for another week. Funny thing is, modern folks think jobs like mine are dirty or gross, so they avoid anything that smells a bit like reality. They're all about clean energy and sustainable careers now. Meanwhile, Pete and his crew were literally knee-deep in the stuff that made the royal family tick. Without us, the docs were flying blind, guessing diseases, like they were throwing darts drunk. You ever wonder why society looks down on jobs that deal with waste? Back then, it was a respected trade. You kept the royals alive and the kingdom stable. Now, people would rather hire robots to vacuum than talk to the guy who cleans the pipes. Funny how times change, huh? Pete often mused,
If you can survive the smell of royal piss, you can survive anything life throws at you. And he wasn't wrong. That's the kind of grit and patience that made this disgusting, smelly job one of the most important in the whole damn kingdom. So next time you turn your nose up at some gross job, remember the royal urine tasters. People who took one for the team, kept the kings healthy, and did it all while holding their breath and keeping a straight face. That's real dedication. Medieval jobs versus modern life. The value of the hated. Pete always liked to put things straight with a little humor. So here's how he sums it up. You complain about your tap water looking a bit yellow. Ha! I've hauled whole buckets of piss that looked worse and used it to heal kings. You spend thousands on fancy creams and serums. Me, I just needed to catch the right pee at the right time and boom, royal medicine. Modern society loves to look down on dirty jobs. Cleaners, waste handlers, even those who deal with bodily fluids. But back in Pete's day, these roles were like gold. Without folks like Pete collecting and tasting royal pee, doctors were basically guessing what was wrong, with the king blindfolded and spinning around. Today, doctors got fancy machines scanning and beeping. Me, I used my tongue and nose to figure out if a nobleman had diabetes, kidney stones, or just ate too much cheese. Pete would joke. Trust me, there's no app for that kind of skill. It's funny how society changes. Jobs that kept kingdoms alive are now treated like the plague or worse, ignored entirely. We've swapped sweat and stink for gadgets and screens, forgetting the roots of healing and survival. People would rather pay big bucks for a detox tea than appreciate the hard, nasty work that used to keep kings breathing. And Pete's got a point. In medieval times, if you couldn't handle the stink, you didn't get the job. Now, if your job stinks, you're probably unemployed. So next time you scroll past a cleaner or cringe at a waste worker, remember Pete and his royal pea-tasting crew. They didn't just handle the nasty stuff, they made history. The value of these hated jobs isn't about glamour, but about guts, skill, and keeping the world turning, even if it meant swallowing a bit of royal stink now and then. Closing. Drops of gold and dreams of cleanness. Pete wraps it up with a grin and a nod to his unusual legacy. Some folks leave behind castles, jewels, or grand battles. Me, I left behind drops of gold. Yeah, royal pea. And I knew how to use it right. He gets serious for a moment, then cracks a smile. Sure, urine can stink like the devil's armpit. But if you know what you're doing, it's worth more than gold. And if you're one of those fancy noses turning up at the mention of this job, well, maybe you should try hauling a bucket of it every day and see how fast your attitude changes. Pete's got a final jab at modern life. You kids got clean water. Fancy soaps and perfumes that smell like a flower shop exploded. Me, I had the job nobody wanted, but everyone secretly needed. Urine collector extraordinaire. With a wink, he finishes with his classic Pete-style truth bomb, my life. Yeah, it's as dull as piss, but at least I did something useful with it. And just like that, Pete's story about the golden side of medieval life reminds us that even the stinkiest jobs can hold real value, and that sometimes greatness smells a little weird. Holy dung curator. All right, listen up. You think collecting piss was weird? Wait till you hear about the next gig. The sacred, the holy, the downright stinky dung curator. Back in the Middle Ages, Folks didn't just throw away pig poop like it was yesterday's leftovers. No, sir. They turned that brown gold into medicine. Yeah, you heard me right. Poop as cure. It was like the VIP of healing potions. They called it the holy shit, or fokiten for the fancy folk. Now let me be clear. This ain't a job for the weak-stomached or the sniffle-prone. If you can't handle a whiff of rotten eggs mixed with barnyard funk for hours on end, you best stay away. Pete's been there, done that, and lived to tell the tale, mostly because he held his nose like a champ. Here's how it went. You take the freshest pig dung, let it sit and ferment. Think of it like a stinky cheese, but way more hardcore. This magical muck was used for everything from healing skin sores, treating infections, to even, wait for it, making people smell a little less like dead rats. Yeah, medieval dermatology was brutal. Now I know what you're thinking, dude. I can't even stand the smell of spoiled milk in my fridge. Well, guess what? Pete once sniffed fermented pig shit for 2 weeks straight, just to make sure it was rich and complex enough to pass the holy quality test. And you know what? He said it had a deep, lingering finish, whatever the hell that means when you're talking about poop. Here's the kicker back then. If you sneezed or gagged during your job, you weren't just embarrassed. You were out of a job. No pity for the faint-hearted in the dung business. And here's my famous Pete wisdom for you. Everybody hates shit, but some of us gotta deal with it. And a few lucky bastards even get to save lives with it. So buckle up, 'cause the next chapter is all about how this brown miracle saved some poor medieval souls and gave Pete plenty of reasons to question his life choices. The profession. The pig shit sommelier. All right, so you think sommeliers only swirl and sniff fancy wine, huh? Well, back in the Middle Ages, some poor souls had to become sommeliers of a much stinkier kind. Meet the pig shit sommelier, the master taster of fermented pig poop. Yeah, I said it. This was a real job. And no, it wasn't a prank. Here's the deal, medieval doctors didn't have modern creams or antibiotics. Instead, they used pig dung. Yes, the kind you'd step in if you weren't paying attention, but fermented just right to make ointments for skin infections, wounds, and all sorts of nasty stuff. And it took a real expert to tell the difference between good shit and bad shit. So what did Pete's job look like? He had to smell it, taste it, and carefully judge the quality of the dung. Not just any dung, mind you. Only the finest pig poop would make the cut. There were seasonal differences too. Springtime pig poop was considered the best. Why, because those pigs were eating fresh green grass and herbs, so their dung smelled fresher and more aromatic. Winter dung. Let's just say it was a lot tougher to stomach. Pigs eating leftover scraps and stale grain made for some seriously rank poop. Picking the right batch was crucial. Too fresh, and it wouldn't have the right healing powers. Too old, and it might just make the patient smell worse than the infection itself. This aging process was like a fine cheese, only much grosser and more dangerous if you got it wrong. And oh boy, the dangers. One time Pete got handed horse manure instead of pig dung. Rookie mistake. The ointment made him run to the outhouse for days. Reverse diarrhea, non-stop itching, and more discomfort than you can imagine. Moral of the story, know your shit, or it'll know you. Believe it or not, some of these dung sommeliers got addicted to the smell. Seriously, when they retired, they'd beg their old bosses for a whiff of the holy aroma just to ease the withdrawal. Imagine craving poop like it's your morning coffee. Pete jokes. If sniffing pig shit was an Olympic sport, some of these guys would be gold medalists. Now, compare that to today. People freak out over a stinky fridge or a dirty diaper. Meanwhile, Pete and his medieval buddies spent their days nose-deep in poop, trying to pick the perfect batch to save lives. That's dedication or madness, sometimes both. In the end, this smelly job wasn't just about grossing people out. It was an art, a science, and a necessity. Without these brave poop sommeliers, medieval medicine would have been a lot less effective and a lot smellier in the wrong way. So, next time you complain about the smell of something gross, remember, some poor bastard out there was paid to love it and save your ancestors' asses with it. Funny and awkward moments in the job. All right, listen up. Being a pig shit sommelier ain't all glory and fancy fermented poop tastings. Nah, it's a world full of mess-ups, misunderstandings, and some downright nasty surprises. Pete's got stories that'll make you laugh, or cringe so hard you'll swear off medicine forever. First off, there was that one time when some idiot moved the fermented pig dung the wrong way. Instead of careful handling, they dumped the whole batch in the sun, cooked it like stew, and ended up poisoning the entire village, or at least gave them a fueled stomachache. Pete says people running around clutching their guts, blaming the baker, the blacksmith, even the church bells. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there like, guys, it's the poop, not the prayer. And then there's the infamous premium poop versus fake crap scandal. You see, pig dung was like gold, but some crafty folks tried to pass off horse manure as pig dung. Cheaper, easier to get. Big mistake. Pete remembers the minute we opened that barrel, you didn't need a sniff test. It smelled like old boots left in a bog for a century. We threw it out, but not before a poor apprentice got stuck trying to use it as medicine. The poor lad spent a week itching like a flea-ridden dog. Now, the family drama. Imagine telling your mom, dad, or significant other that your job is basically smelling and tasting stinky pig poop all day. Pete recalls, when I told my ma, she almost fainted. Son, get a real job, not this stink business. And don't even get me started on the health risks. You think wearing a mask is new? Try holding your breath while handling buckets of fermented feces. One wrong breath and you're coughing up a lung. Despite all that, those in the trade had to keep their dignity. Pete says it's a tough balance. You gotta act like a lord when you're sniffing shit. No grimacing, no gagging. Even if inside you wanna run and wash your nose in holy water. Losing face could mean losing respect, or worse, your job. Pete tells a story about a young apprentice who on his first day got overwhelmed by the stink. The lad gagged so loudly, he nearly threw up on the master. Result: public humiliation and a week's worth of free labor as punishment. Lesson learned in this job: tough noses and thick skin are survival skills. And get this, once a rival dung sommelier tried to sabotage Pete by slipping him some rotten dog crap disguised as pig dung. Pete claims, I swear, I nearly did. That stuff smelled like the devil's armpit. He lived to tell the tale, but with a nose permanently scarred by betrayal. Pete sums it up best. This job ain't for the faint-hearted. You gotta love poop, or at least pretend to. And if you can laugh at the stink and keep your head high, you might just survive. So next time you complain about a bad smell, remember the medieval dung curators. They made a living out of the worst stinks imaginable and somehow turned it into medicine. That's real dedication. Or insanity. Maybe both. Modern comparisons. From hated to valued. Look, I get it. Nowadays, y'all drop big stacks on fancy skincare potions and creams, promising to make you glow like the sun. Meanwhile, back in my day, we used good old fermented pig shit to fix wounds and keep skin healthy. Yeah, you heard me right. Shit. And not just any crap, but the kind that's been aged and blessed by time, and a whole lot of patience. You might scoff and say, "Pete, that sounds disgusting." But let me tell you, there's something pure about using nature's own stuff. You pay a fortune for your fancy creams full of chemicals tested by lab coats and machines. Sure, it's safer, less risky. But it's also boring. Pig dung. That's got character. It's got flavor. It's got the real countryside spirit in it. These days, everyone's jumping on the organic and natural bandwagon, from your avocado face masks to those weird charcoal detox treatments. People call it clean beauty. But me, I say give me a handful of fermented pig poop any day over some synthetic goo. There's a kind of magic there. The same kind of magic that only a poop sommelier knows. When you sniff that right batch, and it hits just right, it's like the countryside itself is healing you. Believe it or not, there are still some crazy folks out there who swear by this holy shit remedy. They think the old ways have wisdom, and they're ready to get their hands dirty for it. I can't blame them. The charm of something real, something raw, beats all the sterile lotions in the world. Now let me tell you about scent. Everyone's chasing the latest perfume, hoping to smell like roses or pine forests or some fantasy land. But the truth, ain't nobody brave enough to bottle the real scent of home, that earthy, funky smell of the farmyard. If anyone dared make a perfume that smelled like fermented pig dung, I guarantee you'd see lines of curious buyers. I mean, it's a bold aroma that says I'm connected to the earth. I'm not afraid to get messy. Imagine the marketing ode to holy dung for the fearless soul. Ha, that'd shake up the perfume world for sure. So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, what was once laughed at, shunned, and called disgusting is now becoming, well, kinda cool. Maybe. At least people respect that sometimes the simplest, smelliest things have the deepest value. Pete's takeaway. Don't be too quick to judge what seems gross or old-fashioned. Sometimes the best stuff comes from the stuff people want to throw away. And if it's good enough to heal wounds and keep kings in shape, maybe it's good enough for your skin too. Next time you smear on your pricey cream, think of the humble dung sommelier, the original skincare guru smelling death and decay so you don't have to. The holy masters of the profession. Now let me tell you about the legends, the true heroes of the pig dung world. These weren't just any folks digging through manure. They were the masters of holy dung, the kings and queens of fermented poop, respected far and wide in the ancient medical circles. When people got sick, they didn't just run to any doctor. They sought out these stink-savvy sages who knew how to pick the perfect batch of dung to fix what ailed ya. These masters weren't just skilled. They were downright holy in their trade. Some say you could hear the whispers of ancient wisdom in the scent of their piles. And if you ever got the chance to meet one, you'd know their noses were like bloodhounds, their tongues trained to sniff out the finest notes of fermentation that could heal wounds and fight infections better than any fancy potion. Pete remembers hearing stories of old-timers who, after decades of service, would retire, but still beg to get a whiff of that sacred stench. Yep, you heard right. Sniffing fermented pig dung to calm their souls and keep the memories alive. They said it's like a perfume you never forget. Pete chuckles. Only this perfume smells like ass. It wasn't just a job, it was a calling. These guys and gals were the saints of shit, the unsung heroes who took one for the team. Their noses and stomachs paying the price so others could heal. The sacrifices they made, priceless. The stink they endured, legendary. And Pete, well, Pete got his own moment of glory, too. After years in the trenches, sniffing and tasting what most folks wouldn't dare. He was handed the ultimate honor, a Master of Holy Dung certificate. A real parchment with fancy letters and everything. What did he do with it? He used it as toilet paper. If you're gonna deal with poop every day, you might as well wipe your ass with your accomplishments. Pete laughs. That's the kind of respect this job deserves. So here's to the holy masters, those brave, smelly souls who turned pig shit into medicine and earned a place in the stinky Hall of Fame. May their noses forever be sharp and their hearts forever proud. Shit is life. Life needs shit. Pete wipes his hands and looks straight at you, proud as ever. People spend their lives chasing gold and jewels. But me? I'm out here hunting for holy shit. The real treasure that most folks don't even want to sniff near. He leans in, a grin creeping up his face. Yeah, shit. Stinks like a beast, and sometimes it's enough to make you puke. But if you know what you're doing, if you've got the nose, the guts, and the patience, shit can save your skin. Literally. Pete shakes his head, amused. Look around today. You spend a fortune on fancy serums, creams, and potions packed with chemicals you can't even pronounce. Me, I'm still sticking with my fermented pig dung ointments. Which one do you think has more character, more soul? He laughs a deep, earthy chuckle. Sure, my job's a little off-putting. There's plenty of shit in my life, more than I'd like to admit. But at least I'm doing my bit to keep the world a little less smelly, a little more healed. Pete's eyes twinkle with that rough wisdom only a lifetime spent with poop could bring. Remember, no matter how crappy life gets, there's always something useful hiding in the stink. You just gotta have the courage to dig through it. He finishes with his signature line like a toast to the weird and wonderful, my life's full of shit, but at least I make the world a little less shitty. An eater. So after years of smelling and tasting all kinds of weird stuff, like fermented pig dung that folks swore by as miracle medicine, guess what? My next gig was even weirder, eating sin. Yeah, you heard me right. Eating sin. Back then, people believed if you died with sin stuck to your soul, you wouldn't get into heaven. That's where a sin eater like me came in. They'd place a loaf of bread on the corpse, and I'd eat it to absorb all the bad karma, all the guilt, all the mess they left behind. For the price of one loaf, your sins could be wiped clean. Imagine that I remembered this one time munching on a loaf sitting on top of some old geezer's chest. I swear I could hear his ribs crackling, like they were complaining. Hey, you're eating my sins, not just the bread. Not the kind of dinner conversation you want, I tell you. Now you kids today, do your detox teas, juice, cleanses, and all that fancy stuff to cleanse your soul. Me, I just ate the sins and got tox at the same time. Call it medieval multitasking.
But here's the kicker. Some folks were so stingy at funerals, they'd put half a slice of bread on the body. I'm like, you expect me to eat a mountain of sins with crumbs? Come on. It's like trying to clear a forest fire with a water pistol. So yeah, eating sin might sound disgusting, but it was a sacred job. Someone had to do the dirty work so souls could rest easy. And me, I was the guy who took one for the team, with a loaf of bread and a stomach of steel. How the sin eater job works. All right, so here's how it goes when I do my sin-eating job. They lay the dead body out, usually with a loaf of bread resting right on the chest or stomach. Then it's my turn. Kneeling down beside the corpse, I start eating the bread piece by piece. But it's not just any bread. This loaf is special. It's soaked up the sins of the poor soul, and as I chew, I can almost feel those sins passing into me.
Sounds creepy.
Well, it is. Sometimes I swear I hear little creaks and crunches from the ribs underneath, like the dead guy's bones are complaining about me munching his sins. It's enough to make your skin crawl. Plus the smell. Oh boy, it's like a mix of old regret, bad decisions, and probably a hint of forgotten laundry. Then there were the times when the loaf wasn't quite safe, like that one funeral where a rat had nibbled the bread. I ate it anyway, but woke up in the middle of the night with a stomach twisting so bad, I thought I'd been possessed by the poor dead guy's ghost. Nope, just a nice dose of rat-induced food poisoning. Not exactly the kind of spiritual cleansing I signed up for. To survive the job, I developed some tricks. First, I had to breathe slow and steady, no gulping or freaking out. I'd tell myself, it's just bread, Pete. Just bread. That way, I kept the sin from eating me back. It's a fine balance. Eat the sins, but don't let them eat you. And let me tell you, not all loaves are created equal. The thickness of the slice tells you a lot. A thin slice, probably a light sinner. Maybe a few small regrets or a nasty argument here and there. A thick, crusty slab. Oh, that's a sinner with heavy baggage, a whole lifetime of screw-ups. That's when you gotta steel yourself and chew slow. So, yeah, the sin eater's job is as much about mental strength as it is about eating some questionable bread on a dead body. You gotta be tough a little crazy and have a strong stomach, all for the price of a loaf of bread. Hard times and unforgettable experiences. Now, not every day as a sin eater is a feast. Sometimes it feels more like a curse. Take the cheap funerals, for example. You'd think someone about to send off a soul would spare no expense on the bread. Right or wrong, I've had days when they slapped me a slice so thin, I swear it looked like a crumb. And here I am eating what's supposed to be all their sins, but it felt like eating dust. I'd grumble to myself, you've got sins piled higher than the church steeple, but you give me crumbs like I'm some village dog. Then there were the real heavy hitters, the sinners with loads of bad karma. One time I got a loaf that felt like it was steaming, with all the guilt and wrongdoings of a lifetime. As I started eating, it was like the sins were punching me in the head. I got dizzy, my stomach turned, and halfway through, I had to call it quits and sit down before I passed out. That day, I learned that sometimes the sins fight back. Oh, and you don't want to be the sin eater for those infamous folks, criminals, murderers, or anyone who lived life on the wild side. I once had to eat for a man sentenced to death for stealing from the church. That loaf was like a bomb of bad vibes.
I felt like my guts were tied in knots all night. Had I known, I'd have asked for double bread to build up some defense. Absorbing all those sins isn't just a job, it's a full-body experience. Sometimes I'd get headaches like a thunderstorm inside my skull, feel sick to my stomach, or lie awake at night, listening for spirits knocking on my door. My family. Well, they started giving me the cold shoulder, saying I was bringing bad luck home. Neighbors whispered that I was carrying sins like a plague. I tried to laugh it off, but it's hard when you feel like you're living with everyone else's mistakes weighing you down. But hey, if the job were easy, everyone would do it. It takes guts and maybe a little madness to swallow the worst of humanity's baggage, all for a loaf of bread. Modern times versus the sin eater. Life. These days, everyone's obsessed with detoxes and cleanses, kale smoothies, celery juice, green tea, and all that fancy stuff. Folks dropping hundreds on juices that promise to flush out their bad vibes. Meanwhile, I was detoxing real sins long before it was trendy. I didn't sip celery juice. I swallowed your guilt, your bad decisions, your midnight mistakes all in one bite of bread. Talk about a cleanse that hits harder than any kale smoothie. And ain't it funny how nowadays people want to live clean but freak out at the thought of getting a little dirt on their hands? Back in my day, I didn't just get a little dirty. I was the human sin vacuum hugging the worst parts of people's lives so their souls could walk free. Today, you hold tight to your phone like it's your lifeline, scared to touch anything messy or real. There's also the whole responsibility thing. I ate people's sins. They handed over their worst bits, and I took the hit. Nowadays, it feels like everyone's running away from owning up. No one wants to carry the baggage. They just want to swipe left on their mistakes like a bad Tinder date. I'm out here chewing on the dirty past of the village, while the young ones ghost their problems like they're texting BRB. Imagine if the Sin Eater gig was still around today. Bet the price would skyrocket. Probably as much as hiring an influencer to scrub your online reputation clean. Hey, wanna cancel your past? Just pay me an Instagram likes and a steady supply of artisanal bread. I'd be the most expensive gig in town, eating sins for clout and coin. But no matter how you slice it, the job never paid well. I used to joke, eat one slice of sin, carry a lifetime of mess, and my paycheck still won't cover salt for the bread. Life ain't fair when you're the one stuck with everyone else's garbage, literal or not. So next time you're sipping that detox tea, remember old Pete here. I took on your sins with a mouthful of bread. No fancy filters, no hashtags, just pure, unfiltered karma. Funny and tragic tales from the Sin Eater's table. You ever think a job that involves eating bread on a dead body would be glamorous? Hell no. Let me tell you some stories that'll make you laugh or cringe so hard you'll need a new pair of pants. Once I dropped a piece of that sacred sin bread right onto the dirt. Before I could pick it up, old Rufus, the village mutt with zero manners, snatched it faster than I could blink. I swear that dog's got better taste in sins than half the village. I was left there starving and sinful, while Rufus probably felt like he was chewing on the devil's own dessert. Then there was the time I bit into a piece and found a beetle right inside. You ever try to swallow a crunchy bug while pretending it's holy bread? Not fun. Almost spit it out. But you don't disrespect the dead. You just grit your teeth and think, well, at least it's high protein. One night I was doing my thing, eating sin like usual, when suddenly I felt a cold breeze and saw something moving near the corpse. Thought I was about to meet a ghost, but nope, just old Mags having a nightmare nearby. Scared me half to death. Didn't eat much sin that night, mostly just prayed I wouldn't faint on the job. Sometimes folks get a little too creative. I've had neighbors bring me bread not for the dead, but for their relatives who were still alive, and arguing like cats and dogs. I'm standing there wondering if I'm supposed to eat emotional sins or just stick to the dead folks' mess. One time I thought I'd lost my mind when I had to eat at a Family Feud dinner. No heaven for those folks anytime soon. And the sins, they ain't small debts. One time, I swear, I felt like I was carrying a mountain on my back after eating that bread. It's like you take on a lifetime of bad decisions, failed promises, and awful secrets in one bite. You think, why am I the one stuck with this but the worst? Trying to eat sin and the bread smells so funky that it reminds you more of spoiled meat than anything sacred. You try to remember this is holy bread, Pete. But your nose says, nope, this is rotten. You swallow anyway, hoping the aftertaste isn't another soul's regret. Being the sin eater means swallowing more than just bread. It's swallowing the weight of a village's darkest moments, all for the price of a measly loaf. Funny, tragic, and disgusting all at once. But hey, somebody's gotta do it. The final word, lessons and wisdom from the sin eater. Pete always says you live your life clean, but me, I'm eating your sins for a loaf of bread. It ain't glamorous, but someone's gotta do the dirty work. Here's the truth, sins can be heavy, real heavy. And yes, sometimes they stink worse than a pig's sty in summer. But without someone willing to swallow that mess, souls don't get their peace. That's the real magic behind this strange job. It's not just bread and guilt. It's redemption served on a wooden plate. Now these days, people spend crazy money detoxing with juices and cleanses. Me, I detox by chewing on sin-soaked bread. Different kind of cleanse, but hey, same goal, get rid of the bad stuff and feel a little lighter. And here's my motto for life. Eat one bite, carry a lifetime. Still don't make enough to buy iodine salt. Ain't that the truth? For all the sins I swallow, my pockets stay empty, and my belly's often empty too. But if I didn't do it, who else would? So next time you curse the sin eater, remember, I'm the one making sure your soul can rest easy, all for the price of a humble loaf. And that my friend is a deal worth every crumb. Don't feel bad about job hopping, just look at me. So listen up. If you've been jumping from job to job feeling lost or like you just can't find the right gig, don't beat yourself up too much. Take a good look at me. P to the sin eater, the holy dung curator, the royal louse picker, and whatever else I've been called. My resume looks like a freaking medieval freak show of weird jobs nobody else wants. I mean, honestly, I've had more jobs than a village rooster has crowed. And guess what? I'm not ashamed. Not even a little. Because here's the thing, I haven't found my true passion yet. And if you think that sounds rough, remember the jobs I do. I've eaten sins soaked in stale bread, sniffed and tasted pig dung to make medicine-picked lice out of noble heads, and collected royal sweat straight from the pit. If that's not dedication to job hopping, I don't know what is. Some people get famous for being rich or powerful. Me, I'm famous for smelling like a walking biohazard. But it's not because I'm some kind of freak. It's just that my path hasn't been a smooth one. I'm still looking for the job that fits my soul like a pair of comfy shoes, and maybe doesn't stink as much. So don't let anyone shame you for changing jobs, trying new things, or feeling like you haven't found your calling. Life's too short to stick with a gig that makes you miserable, especially if you're destined for something weirder or better, or just different. Even if your journey looks a bit like mine, a messy, smelly, wild ride through the weirdest jobs history has to offer. Besides, every odd job I've done has taught me something about patience, about grit, and about not taking yourself too seriously when you're knee-deep in other people's sins or sweat or whatever else they throw at you. So here's my advice. Keep looking, keep trying, and don't be afraid to stink a little along the way. Because one day, maybe you'll find your true calling. Or at least a job that pays better than a loaf of bread and a bucket of royal sweat. And until then, just remember, it's not about where you start or how many weird gigs you take. It's about showing up, doing your best, and laughing at the mess life makes. So chin up, job hoppers of the world. You're not alone. Pete's been there, smelling the worst of it and still standing. And if I can do it, so can you. Accidentally reborn as a medieval peasant. When your karma said new life, but forgot to read the fine print. Imagine this. You die in your past life, maybe as a barista, a failed poet, or someone who only ever sent LOL in group chats. You hit the reincarnation lottery and wake up in the 1300s as a peasant, not a knight, not a merchant, not even a mildly respected dung dealer. Nope, just a barefoot, toothless, lice-ridden, mud-sleeping peasant born into a job that isn't even listed on LinkedIn because it's 90% don't die and 10% carry hay until your spine screams. You wake up in a hut made of cow shit and leftover regrets. Breakfast. If you're lucky, stale barley soaked in yesterday's rain. Lunch. Hopes and prayers. Dinner, whatever the rats didn't finish. Your daily tasks include not dying of dysentery, avoiding the plague by sheer dumb luck, farming a field you don't own for a lord you'll never meet, giving 10% of your non-existent income to a church that says touching yourself leads to hell. There's no soap, no deodorant, no weekends, no HR department when your neighbor stabs you for a turnip. If your crops fail, it's your sin. If you get sick, it's God's punishment. If your wife sneezes, someone's probably a witch. And guess what? It might be you. And don't even think about career advancement. Want to move up? Better hope the blacksmith dies and someone remembers you can count to 10. Being a medieval peasant isn't a job. It's a punishment dressed as a lifestyle. You're stuck in a loop of mud misery and mandatory tithing. You wipe with leaves, bathe in rivers, and pray that no lord randomly decides your sheep look too sexy. So next time you complain about Zoom calls or passive-aggressive Slack messages, just remember, at least you don't have to pay taxes in chickens. Sleepy history, where the past is filthy unfair and definitely underpaid. A gentle journey to rest, a soothing sleep blessing. Hey there, friend. It's time now to let the busy day melt away to quiet the chatter in your mind and to give your body the rest it truly deserves. Imagine yourself sinking gently into a soft bed, the weight of the world lifting from your shoulders with each slow, steady breath you take. Close your eyes if you want, or just soften your gaze. Feel the calmness begin to settle over you, like a warm blanket on a chilly evening. Each breath is an invitation. Breathe in peace, breathe out tension. Let your body relax from the top of your head, down your neck, through your shoulders, all the way to your toes. There's no rush here, no deadlines, no worries, no noise, just this moment, this quiet space where your soul can breathe freely. You're safe, you're calm, you're exactly where you need to be. Imagine a gentle river flowing inside you, carrying away anything that weighs you down. Stress, tiredness, doubts. See the water washing all that away, leaving you feeling lighter, softer, more peaceful. You don't have to hold on to anything tonight. Let it all go. You deserve this rest. If your mind wanders, that's okay. Gently bring it back to the rhythm of your breath, like the soft rise and fall of waves on a quiet beach. Picture the sunset, the golden light fading slowly into twilight, and stars beginning to peek through the darkening sky. Know that every part of you is healing as you rest. Your body repairs itself. Your heart finds calm. Your mind takes a pause. You are healing simply by surrendering to sleep. Think of this night as a gift, a sacred time when your worries dissolve, your energy restores, and your dreams weave gentle stories just for you. You don't have to chase anything tonight. Just be, just breathe, just drift. If any thoughts come, like little visitors stopping by, greet them kindly, then watch them float away like leaves on a stream. Nothing needs your attention right now. This is your time to recharge, to be whole again. Feel your muscles soften, your heartbeat steady, your breathing slow. Imagine warmth spreading through your chest, a quiet light glowing softly in your heart, growing with every breath you take. This light is your inner peace, always with you, always steady. And as you continue this peaceful journey, know that tomorrow is waiting gently on the horizon, full of new chances, new joys, and new moments to cherish. But right now, all you need is rest. So let your body sink deeper into softness. Let your mind float free in the calm. Let your soul dream wild and beautiful dreams. You are exactly enough, just as you are. Sleep well, dear friend. May your night be quiet, your rest deep, and your heart light. When morning comes, may you wake feeling refreshed, renewed, and ready to greet the world with a gentle smile. Good night, sweet dreams. You are loved. You are safe. You are whole.